Check.
Any possible grants or anything that they can? Yeah. Okay, because they're considering our county, Jasper, or Stark County. So I said, well, I know it sounds like the building department is Stark County.
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
So I said, I got out your Stark County map, and I said, well, it might be easier in Gillespie County. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's Kimberly Horn and HWC.
I'll put that on the side burner.
He went out
until
to
we reach
sign the paper. He
Yeah,
said
I didn't
he'll
give
get
her the
back.
phone number or anything,
But
so.
next time, feel free.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Envision, our first firm, is here. They're scheduled for 10. We can move a little bit quickly if we can. Mike is out signing something, I guess. You have in front of you an agenda showing the order of our firms. We also have score sheets for each firm. Please go ahead at some point, make sure your names are on them. And please, for it, quickly confirm the first square on your sheet should be filled out. For Envision, you should see an 8.66. I'll make sure I copied all these correctly. For HWC Engineering on page 2, you should see an 8.78. For American Structure Point, you should see an 8.83. For TSWDG, you should see a 9.09. And for Kimberly Horn, you should see an 8.26. These are reflective of 10% of the average score that each firm's proposal received during the review process. 4 of us who are in the room today and 3 other people reviewed the proposals, and then Jenny replaced Don Street, Leanne has replaced Morgan Federer, and Big Mike is replacing Ken Boswell, so that we had a mix of commissioners and council with members who have been involved on either the CDC or the Plan Commission, as well as 2 partner agencies who have been advocates for doing this. So the way the scoring sheet approach this, however you feel comfortable, it's structured a little more loosely than the proposal scoring was, so that in the language that the kids use today, it's sort of a vibe check based on the answers they give, the sort of feel in the room, how it goes. Like, you feel comfortable working on them. They all scored relatively closely enough on their proposals that the commissioner said interview them all. So while they're signs of their competency or red flags about it are important today, it's also just about how it feels and how they respond to our questions, in how they continue to show their competency, and just what their presentation shows. Any questions or concerns before we get started and bring in the first firm? Envision is based in Cincinnati. They're from Ohio. They were not somebody who necessarily would have normally been on our radar, but they happened to have a booth set up at the Indiana Economic Development Association's annual conference when I was there in December. I grabbed a card. I said, "What the heck?" The guy who was there, the guy is like a lawyer, a planner, and an engineer all in one. So he brings a lot of education and a very diverse skill set and background. So I said, "What the heck?" I'll send it to him. Perhaps a little bit to my surprise, they submitted, and so they're here. The other 4 are all Indiana-based. But anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns we want to address before we ask Emil and Tom to join us?
Sorry.
All right, well then I will bring them in and we can get rolling.
It'll share, it should be.
You can sit to the left of the table, or you can go one on either side. Okay. Do you have anything to display?
Yes.
Yeah, you want to just plug into that laptop. It's a little bit slow, it might take a second for it to load, but that'll get you on 3 screens in the room.
Morning.
If we want to, Jenny, if you want to start, we can introduce ourselves while they're starting to get settled in.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Hazimi. I sit on the council.
Mike Teedy, I sit on the council.
Leanne Wright, I serve as Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Pulaski County.
Carla Redwick, Building Inspector and Plan Commission Administration.
And Abby Dickey, I'm on the BZA and the APC.
And you've met me, I'm Nathan Orger. I am the Director of Community Development.
Emil Wisniewski, Principal with Envision, and the Project Manager.
And Paul Muller, Director of Public Finance for the Envision.
I'm so sorry. I didn't catch your name.
Yes, and I will give you a card here because my name is
EMIL is long.
You can call it, you can just call me E. That'll make it easy. I have a lot of friends who do that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Al.
Mine is with me.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Are you related
Thank
to a
you.
judge?
Judge, no.
Okay.
I'm from Cincinnati.
Oh,
so,
never mind.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Thank you.
it was one of my brothers and his or sisters as turned judge without my knowledge. I have a sister who's an attorney, but
Nathan, would you just want us to dive in there?
Yeah, go right ahead, please.
Your words?
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your attention and time this morning. Really just kind of wanted to step through an overview of our team. We understand this is a little more of a vibe check, if you will, rather than, here's our qualifications of everything we worked on, but I do want to highlight what I believe is our relative experience. Should be there in the proposal. Really talk a little bit about what we believe is our understanding of your project and your challenges and opportunities. Talk a little bit about the stakeholder engagement piece. Sounds like you've got a really good group. The fact that you've got a committee together for this shows that you're mobilized and you're excited about the project. Dig into some of the details on our approach and milestones, and then we'll wrap up with our implementation focus, which I think sets us apart. So as far as our team, we're a little bit different than most planning firms. We're interdisciplinary, and when I say that, while I'm a certified planner, I'm also an attorney and engineer. Usually I don't share the attorney part because people think we're expensive or corrupt or something like that. But it does help when we think about things like zoning, development regulations, public-private partnerships, incentives, all those things I draw upon my legal background. My colleague, Brian Smalley, is also engineer and planner. Jennifer Six from our team is a community and economic development specialist who does a lot of corporate site selection incentives, so sits on both sides of the table. And Jacob Bean is our GIS and mapping guru to make things look nice and presentable.
And my background is actually on your side of the table. I was a city manager in the Cincinnati area for almost 44 years. So I'm in my second act. And I think that's one of the things that I bring to the table here is that I have seen from your perspective what comprehensive plans can do and have looked at it from your side. And so I came off of the Envision team when I retired from the city of Madeira, Ohio, which is a small suburban community outside of Cincinnati, back in 2022. And I've been with now Envision for 3 years. So again, as I said, I'm in my second act. I also was president of the Ohio City Management Association back in the mid-1980s. And I taught public budgeting and finance at University of Cincinnati, which is where I graduated from, and Xavier University. So I taught undergraduate programs for public administration over my career as a city manager.
So just a little bit about my background experience and how I fit into all this with the different hats I wear is really at the heart of my strategic planning guide. Getting groups together, figuring out what your short list of action items are, and figuring out a way to tackle those problems. So I do a heck of a lot of stakeholder facilitation, engagement, public engagement, work a lot on the back end of projects on innovative finance strategies, whether that be things like a TIF or some type of tax incentive. Work a lot on the P3 and regulatory frameworks, work a lot on zoning and development regulation. Also work a lot in the funding. So some relevant experience personally, up there on the screen is a county, Brown County, Southwest Ohio, rural, a little bigger than you guys, but only 40,000 still, which is one of Ohio's smaller counties. What you see on the map there highlighted are some in color or some areas where they wanted smart growth. You can see there's not too many, and then there's a lot of what they call green belts. This is a county that definitely wanted to stay rural, but a community that we worked in for a year-long process very similar to this, identifying areas where infrastructure could support development and where community opposition was not too loud. This is a community that definitely wanted to stay rural, stay agricultural.
So, I mentioned my background already. The very first project that I worked on was doing a strategic plan for Butler County, which is it is a rural county adjacent to Indiana. We did the finance authorities, and they used to be called the Port Authority, they're not called the Butler County Finance Authority. We did their strategic plan. They wanted to have some focus and work in conjunction with the county commission. We put together a plan that focused on hiring an executive director, as well as putting together a matrix of implementation items for all of the items that showed up in the strategic plan. Butler County was a very conservative community. It's a little over 200,000 people, just north of Cincinnati. But they also have a number of rural areas, and so we work with all of the townships. We work with all the communities within that to develop a strategic plan so that they can then move forward with their economic development strategies that they were trying to focus on.
My colleague Ryan, who co-founded Envision with me, really kind of leads up our land use and infrastructure planning components. One of his projects applicable to you guys was for the Western Ohio Rural Planning Organization that we helped set up and do their first long-range transportation plan, which had a lot of land use and economic development components. That was centered around Allen County, Ohio, which is Lima, and actually had 7 counties, including a couple that border Indiana. We actually had labor shed that went into Jay County and some of the other counties on the eastern part of Indiana. But definitely a very agricultural set of communities, and the main priority for these communities was paper roads. Pretty simple stuff. Make sure the roads are wide enough so we can move. I mentioned Jennifer Six, and again, she's working on that corporate site selection side and really is our interface with the business community. She brings experience on both sides of the table, public and private. She also brings background at time in the community economic development director. So just a little bit about our team, a mix of planning, economic, and technical experience. We have helped our communities and clients secure over $80 million in grant funding in the last 8 years. Many of those are from federal discretionary sources, so those are things that speak to you and other communities, regardless of state or location. We have a lot of rural community planning experience. Some of those I mentioned, Brighton Township and Fenton Township, Michigan, outside the Flint and Ann Arbor areas, Williams County, Ohio, which borders you guys as well, and Michigan, the very northwest corner of the state, helped their Port Authority with a lot of housing projects in that rural community. We do a lot of stakeholder engagement, both in person and some virtual tools that will help step away. Our projects really fall under 3 buckets. Strategic planning, like these kind of efforts that we're talking about today, connectivity and infrastructure, kind of pulling upon our roots in the civil engineering profession, and then economic development strategies, more tailor focused on how do we get a site ready for development, how do we incentivize that development, how do we attract, retain, expand. In all 3 of these buckets, we work on the implementation side, and I think this is what really sets us apart. So for strategic comprehensive planning, we're working on the back end with zoning regulation. For connectivity and infrastructure, that means we're helping communities identify funding sources and grants. For economic development, we're helping set up the innovative finance tools, incentives, tips, community benefit agreements, RFPs for developers. Those are all things we help our clients. I touched on some of our rural projects, but...
I'm sorry, could you define rural for me, please?
Sure. So we would normally say areas that fall outside of a metropolitan statistical area. There's a lot of different definitions. This comes into play with something like opportunity zones right now, where people might be in an MSA by their county, but they're not part of the contiguous urbanized area. And that we do have many communities we've worked in that fall in that category. Usually when we're talking about outside of MSA, it's a metro area of less than 50 grand. Or anything less than 50 grand urbanized is not considered a metro area. So it's kind of like, do you have an MPO, a metropolitan planning organization, or not? Usually that's kind of that question. You guys are obviously one of the most rural counties in the state, lowest population densities. So we understand that we're talking about large swaths of land and then small towns that are kind of population dense. We might have these external forces like energy production, things like that that might be coming. But yeah, it can just vary by community. We do work also in a lot of Appalachian communities, which by nature in the hills, extremely low population densities, very little water and sewer. You know, those are usually that defining factor. You know, the water and sewer.
Thank you.
Sure. But we've also worked in places like Geauga County, Ohio, which has the largest concentration of conservation and farmland agricultural easements in the entire state. Controversial there because some people think that folks shouldn't be incentivized to preserve land. Get all sorts of opinions as you go through this. But we also have worked in for ODOT with the statewide Amish travel studies. So we've got some pretty unique challenges. It looks like Amish populations maybe a little to the east of you, not so much. But they do move. We found that out. There's migration, and sometimes one area gets a little bit filled up, and they like to get away from the hustle and bustle and movement. So they have some unique challenges as far as they auction land, how they finance. So just looking at you guys and kind of focusing on why we're here today, we mentioned really low population density jumped out at us. Obviously, you're a little bit off the interstate system, so it takes a little while to get here. So if people are concerned about, gosh, I don't want to see too much development, infrastructure kind of naturally meters development. You're not going to see explosive growth. So I would always say for anybody that's concerned about keep it rural movements that we see a lot of times, there's only so much of them. But at the same time, when we look at your area, the other thing we looked at was, household income's a little bit lower than the state, but it's not at a level of distress, widespread. So you don't qualify for things like opportunity zones or new markets tax credits or some of these incentives that are very much based on need. Not to say that there aren't people in need, but demographically you're pretty solid. You're just a little bit below average as far as household income. I will say, some other demographic items that jumped out to us were educational attainment was fairly low as far as percentage of adult population with bachelor's degrees. That was like 14% versus 30% statewide. Obviously, who goes to college now and who really needs to, that dialogue is changing, so I don't want to say that that sets your destiny, but there are challenges when you talk about earnings potential in the future. You are slightly older as a population than most communities in the States. I one time told a community they were an aging community. I guess they were getting that and say everyone's aging. That's true. We all are. But on average, you're a little bit older. So that's not uncommon for our community. Those are two items right there that we see over and over. So it's how do you retain your young people, your young talent, and make sure that they have a place where they have the housing and amenities to continue to live in the area. And you also want people to be able to age in place. We do see seniors time and time again will say, I can't maintain all the land, the big yard I have, the big house I have, 2 stories. I need something that's a little more of a flat, a ranch, a little bit of a smaller yard, maybe even a townhouse in town, something like that. So just making sure you have a housing mix that meets you. Our understanding from our background research and RFP, it looks like, solar production has been a pretty big issue for you guys. We saw some of the signs and Facebook posts and whatnot opposing that, but it also looks like it's provided some real benefits for you as far as the cash influx to the community. So this plan, we really see the opportunity to say, hey, we know that there's an agreement here and there's money coming. What are our community investments? What are the kind of civic projects we want to tackle? Whether that's just state-of-the repair, pave the roads, or whether that's maybe some public spaces, trails. We have some regional trails. You have some great nature reserves and parks. Are there amenities like that?
So I'm glad that you brought that up. And obviously that was something we addressed in the RFP. So we do have our kind of go-to financial consultants, Baker Tilly, who are going to be working with the county on an updated fiscal plan. And it's likely that there will be some overlap in these two things, but theirs is going to be more focused on the dollars generally, not just looking at solar project or the county's budget overall. And whereas you're going to be talking about projects, but I guess especially knowing that there is another part, like if we hire you, what is like your approach to this, like these guidelines, these recommendations for a community investment framework? Obviously, at the end of the day, you're going to be driven by what you hear from community input, stakeholders, but like as far as how you put this together, how you present it, how you help us to prioritize those competing needs, like what's your philosophy for putting together this sort of framework for making the most of this money that we're seeing come?
So I'm going to flip ahead to a slide that I think will answer exactly that question. That's a great point. And I'm going to let Tom tackle this one. And I'll flip back if we have time to see this other stuff. This is the crux of the issue.
So one of the most important components to this is to do a project prioritization for whatever those recommendations turn out to be. And we can provide to you what is called a decision matrix. And you'll make the determination of the weighting of various factors. But you've seen the proposal, we just got a template for this up here. So every project will be determined on what kind of return on investment there is. And then looking at how that return on investment is impacting your fiscal situation, your budget. So that's something we can work on with you to determine what elements are going to be important, what the return on the investment is going to be, and then that can ripple through your annual budget.
And I would say, that's kind of the ROI piece up there is one of the buckets we look at. So if you consider this as a spreadsheet with a row for each project or initiative, whatever that might be, that investment, and then in column one, ROI, what's that a return on investment? We're quantifying something. And there are various studies, there's various economic tools like InPlan, if this is something that has direct job creation, there's ways we can quantify benefits to, again, at the end of the day, tax stuff, what return. And there's qualitative benefits. And these are things like, hey, we know people are more likely to visit an area based on a certain type of improvement. Yeah, the typically the water trail, things like that might draw people in, place safety. Then we have plan goals that we established in this vision. Are we checking boxes on plan goals? Is this investment aligned with the vision that we established in the first steps for the community? And then there's also this column here for public input. And we'll go back and talk a little bit about the different ways we get public input. We had a laundry list of different commissions, boards, elected officials you wanted us to meet with, nonprofits. We would be recording all their input and their various priorities, which might not all align, but how many of those groups are we checking thumbs up on this project? And when we kind of compare those four columns, we can have a fairly simplistic or a little more complicated of a scoring matrix. And the idea is, when we talk about weighting, like Tom said, we're trying to look at differentiation between projects. That's what prioritization is all about. And I don't expect you to be able to read this here and squint. I'll step through it verbally. This was a little bit more of a complicated decision matrix we developed for community that had a very involved planning commission, but they really looked at 3 different tiers of ROI. They had 1 point for a low cost, low benefit project, kind of an easy, quick. High cost, high benefit got 2 points. And then the ideal project, the magical silver bullet, low cost, high benefit, that was 3 points. Fairly simplistic, but that was how they broke it up. Then qualitative benefits, they had some areas they wanted to see touched. One was public health, another was civic identity, social interaction, aesthetics. These are all things that are a little more nebulous, a little bit harder to put a dollar value on. They gave points by if it met 1, 2, or 3 plus of those different categories. The third column, as we talked about, was planned themes. This community had 4 simple planned themes: economic development, active transportation, community facilities, which is basically parks for them, housing. If it hit 1, 2, or 3 plus themes, it got additional points for it. Finally, public input. This community did a whole bunch of it. Again, we'll talk about some of the tools, but we had a community-wide survey, which we always recommend that would go out in print, but also online, QR codes, social media feeds, all those things. Everybody can participate. In public meetings. Feedback boards. We've also put up boards and QR codes at different community events where somebody's not coming to a public forum, which is part of the scope, but hey, you have a festival, you have a park that's visited, you have a travel sports event, whatever it might be in your community, here's a board, here's an opportunity to put some pins in or scan a QR code, catching people on their home turf.
What does that look like? And what I mean is, like, are you going up and you're going over to Maderiaville to the Potato Fest, and you have a booth, or are you just like manning it actively, or are you just putting it up there? And the reason I ask specifically is that one of the things our tourism board is trying to do better about this year is showing up that we have a tent for that sort of thing and a table cover. And so, like, could we set my assistant up with you guys, and then they can see like that synergy there, that it's not just some random guys here, but it's like it makes it very clear this is a county project.
That's the ideal way you live it out. We would want somebody there that's not like, oh, this is some consultant, what are they selling? But we need to be there to facilitate, ask the questions, hear the feedback. Because honestly, a lot of it, some people will not put a pin in the board or do a post-it, they'll just talk to you. And while it's tougher to quantify, we can take notes, but it does give us the flavor of the community. Mm-hmm. And having somebody there is the perfect way to do it, because if you have a partner or government worker, whatever it is, oh, I recognize this person, or he's with, and they have the shirt that says Pulaski County, whatever it might be. That helps sell it. So yes, that's how we generally do these things. We have some pictures of this that we'll show, but just capture people where they're at, pick, 3 to 5 events that are well attended. I don't know, how many you have, we work with you, try to fit them in the right spots in the process. They don't all have to be up front. We can have different layers of questions. Up front, it's going to be very much high level, right? We're up at the 50,000 foot view, everything's on the table. 6, 7 months into the plan, now we're starting to get down to a short list. So early on, broad questions. Later on, it might be, hey, pick between 3 to 5 things. What's your favorite? If that makes sense.
One thing you need to know if you do end up working with us, and this is probably a sensitive subject given your name, we say Pulaski here. It's a weird historical thing, and the fault actually lies in upstate New York and early white settlers who came to here from there. It's New York's fault, but we do not get it correct. Or we are the only ones who are right.
Well, I appreciate you pointing that out.
And to be fair, in the original Polish, it's not the normal L, it's the L with the slash that has it, so it's more like Pulaski anyway. But we say Pulaski, and they will not take kindly if you get that.
Well, with a name like Liz Nancy, I can learn to say something. Pulaski. I'm just going to look up to the skies. Pulaski.
I have a question about the input process. How do you, when you're doing community engagement, how do you distinguish between input and influence?
Good question. Great question. So, we always do say one thing to kind of step back is when you do a survey or a poll, you're not voting. It's a piece of information. It is input, truly. And we do that for all sorts of reasons. One, you're not voting. It's not, you don't have poll workers and verification, because we always get those questions. What if someone's in? But input, we're looking broadly, everybody's got a voice. Influence, we're looking a little bit at tiers like your elected officials. They have a stronger voice. Ultimately, they have the ones who have to sign off on this. So just kind of, there are level layers to this, and some of that is determined by the voters and who they put in the legislative. So we don't necessarily weight all things evenly. There are influencers and input, but input all are welcome, and we do look for themes across the different categories. Our experience is we will see themes emerge among different groups. It might not be on everything, but there will be consensus themes that emerge from people that you might think are not aligned at all. They might be approaching things from a different perspective. They might use different nomenclature, but when you really hear the input and listen to them, kind of talking about the same thing. And that doesn't necessarily fall on political lines or big city here in Mid-Mac versus countywide rural areas. It could be all over. Did any questions on the decision matrix here? I didn't mean to not complete my thoughts. But basically, scoring for, in this final category, public input, different sources, more points. So if we heard it in person at events, we heard it on the community survey, we heard it from commissions and boards, elected officials, proportionately scoring. This community also wanted to have a couple of bonus categories. One was possibility of additional funding. So leveraging, hey, you have this community investment from your solar developer. But we also think we can match state or maybe even federal governments based on that project. We get some bonus points based on project. We also had a category here for first step in a critical path process. Sometimes, unfortunately, I hate to have a plan that says do more plans, but sometimes there's preliminary engineering, site readiness, environmental studies that need to be done. That can be a project, and sometimes that first piece can also be funded. So just understanding that some of the longer term projects might not get done within your planning horizon, but you need to start.
And one of the things that I would point out with the decision matrix is that if you do an annual goal setting session, this is very, very helpful in prioritization of what you're trying to accomplish or what you would like to accomplish. And it's also very much a living document because as you accomplish things, you will now insert different programs or different services or different projects into the decision matrix. And again, it can be used over and over and over again in your goal setting and prioritization.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue. Tom knows the script. This is a community in Southwest Ohio where we help them with a comprehensive plan. It's their first plan ever. And just to help, they were so excited about having a plan and implementing a plan that their planning commission had a standing business agenda item each month for comprehensive plan implementation. And at the beginning of the plan set the priorities, but each year after the plan was adopted, they'd go revisit the 4 buckets that I spoke of, same community with the decision matrix. They had these 4 themes. They said, hey, we're a small community, we're going to do 2 of these priority projects in each theme. That's going to be our kind of 8 projects for the year. And this really kept them on pace. And they'd actually do updates to the public about, hey, how many grant dollars we've had, how many zoning updates or things like that we've done in partnerships with nonprofits, so that people could see that there was a return on investment for this initial plan investment. That was a big point of contention in this community. How can we spend money on planning to have fire and police and paved roads? But the return on investment was quite astronomical, and it usually is if you do the plan right and get the input and are serious. I would just flip back here to, I think, some of the important points that we're talking about, the community engagement tools. These are some action shots, a little blurry there. These are actually both just community events that weren't traditional public. Although that's part of the scope and that's important, there is that ability to capture people where they would be otherwise. The first was something called Ladies Night Out in this community. It was a tough crowd. They had a lot of demands. Kind of a wine and cheese crowd in this community, but they had a lot of input and we got a good cross section of the community. Another one at the bottom is a street festival. This was kind of cool because you saw families kind of provide input as a group. The kids would be like, oh, I'd love to see a park with this or a trail. And you'd have parents would be more excited about, okay, how do we zone this certain area, where would we? All things that we can have on. I will say, after COVID, QR codes kind of came back in vogue, and just the ability to put up some yard signs. I know, being a rural community, you're not going to get those out in front of various farms, but at kind of the crossroad communities or just anywhere where people gather, trailheads, civic centers, just having some old school garage sale signs, if you will, take the community survey QR code. We've got tremendous response with that. It's helped get out the numbers. I will say the number one complaint that communities will always, people will always push back again. We didn't get enough people participating. We didn't get enough people. You do all these things, you get it on your social feeds, put it on your public-facing websites, you're at events, you're having public meeting inputs, you're getting partner input from schools and others. There's only so much you can do. People have to come halfway. But we feel this is a pretty good approach. Get as many people involved as possible. On that note, I do increasingly get the comment that, hey, in rural areas we farm, we don't have time to go to public meetings, we get that a lot. We have, hey, kids have sports, I've got parents to take care of, whatever it might be. How do we do this online? The nice thing is we have a tool called Maptionaire. We pay dearly for it, but it's part of our overhead, so it's just, we can run this as much as you want. We can create interactive surveys to supplement those in-person activities. And rather than just a traditional survey monkey that says, hey, where would you like to see farmland preserved? Here's 4 different areas descriptive in text. We can actually have the county highlighted and broken into quadrants, townships, whatever boundaries you want. And you can click on it like a Google map. And for us, it generates a heat map. It's integrated with GIS. You can show people this is what you said. I will say, we get the question, well, our seniors, they don't go online. When we do these things and put out the polls, increasingly seniors are our most vocal participants in online. Well, my dad's 83, he has an iPad, he can do it, others can't. We have print, we can get it out to churches, we can get it out to senior, nursing facilities, whatever it is, wherever those places are, we can get out print copies and scan them in. But online engagement is important just to increase the number of participants. So we do have this tool. It's really easy to use. And again, it's just in response to the investment. We want to get more people.
So Maptionaire, I'm not familiar with it. It seems like very cool. At least in my perception, the one drawback to online input is that unless somebody is unless you've created a Pulaski County Comprehensive Plan Facebook page, and somebody's actively sitting at the computer monitoring it, I can add my input, but there's not necessarily the same opportunity for asking follow-up questions and having a dialogue and getting at the heart of it. I'm tired of X, Y, and Z happening, and actually understanding why X. Is it you just think X, Y, and Z are bad, or are they not? Has the county not handled them properly, or have unintended consequences? Is there a way to use Maptionaire that allows for us not just to get the input, but some sort of more detailed explication of why X, Y, or Z is concerned?
Absolutely. So a lot of times these communities will start with a broad community survey, kind of going to the earlier point about filtering down ideas, and then we'll brand it something different so that people don't think they've already done. We don't want somebody saying, I did the original survey, I'm done. So sometimes that will be a virtual public input session, something along those lines. But this goes for the public meetings. We start broad, and then you come and you start to react to concepts, ideas, or in your case, what you proposed issues. Why has this not been successful? Or what would you like to see? How we do that? That's something where we can ask different questions, and they can be more detailed. And they can be different exercises where instead of broad, county-wide, the maps zooming in on different focus areas. So, the software doesn't restrict us in any way onto what we want to ask. And, if it's more of a traditional text-oriented question, those inputs traditionally are all like your SurveyMonkey. That's all it has to. And for certain things, we still use SurveyMonkey just for simplicity. Great. And we do allow open-ended. So those comments and write-ins, it's a little bit of work to go through them and organize them. But you'll see recurring. Usually it has things about So just to talk a little bit about process. So we do have a 4-step process, kind of broken up across the year. A couple extra months for approvals. But first step is really identifying, and that's setting the vision. That's determining exactly who we want to engage and when. I think you have a pretty good outline on that point. So probably contract, but there may be those additional small groups that get identified, targeted stakeholders. You obviously want to review all your past plans, anything the regional partner or local community's done. You have 2 communities that have their own planning authority. So kind of like he alluded to, making sure that their voice is heard and that we're thinking about, we don't want their 2-mile jurisdiction of authority to just abruptly end and then something else completely incompatible goes on. Very sensitive. We want there to be synergy. We want to make sure that we have focus areas, whether that's geographic or thematic. Next 3 months, phase 2 is our assessment. This is all the fun data that we pull: social, economic, physical data, GIS, mapping, your housing stock, traffic patterns, infrastructure capacity, talking to your local utility providers to see, do they have capacity? Can they expand? What are those service areas looking like? That informs planners. Another piece of this is market analyses, where people are spending their money, where they have discretionary, and where there might be gaps in the market. There are gaps where we think money's leaving the community and there's enough discretionary spending power at the household level based on the workforce. Maybe there's some opportunities for some additional commercial development. Third phase is our recommendations. So we're talking really future land use map is a huge part of this, and then looking ahead to a subsequent zoning update to think about, we can't rewrite the zoning code as part of the plan, but we can have best practices, model language from other communities, an audit, if you will, of existing zoning. I think the community impact investments we talked about, your core infrastructure needs are obviously a huge part of this. And then those various comp plan chapters, recommendations for all those categories: housing, agriculture, solar, environmental. And then when you start to talk about towns themselves, redevelopment, how do we help fill vacant storefronts? Obviously, we might not get super detailed into that, given you have your own planning authority.
So that's interesting. Yes, Winnemac and Francis will have their own planning authorities, but our redevelopment and economic development commission are countywide. And so the municipalities, they have planning functions, but they do not have really any economic or community development function on their own. So, I generally have good working relationships with those bodies, but it is an issue where my office, and the way under state law, like our economic development commission has a member appointed by Winnemac as the largest municipality. So there are inconsistencies in where the overlaps and segregations exist.
Okay, like you are providing that service
Yes.
for them as well.
Yes.
So there's some opportunities to have some more programmatic
Yes.
programs.
It's sometimes an issue of, part of the redevelopment commission's vision might align really well with the county plan ordinance and plan commission's vision. And it hasn't been an issue, but could run into a little bit of pushback from a town council or town plan commission just because their ordinance might not be quite the same.
Right.
Haven't run into that, but it's theoretically a possibility.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head of making that interface to make sure that, hey, the local plan, the local development ordinance speaks to whatever the county-wide investment is.
Winnemac always tries to mirror the county
Yeah.
anyway, so when we
They've
do
not quite
changes
caught
at
up, but
county.
yes, Winnemac has
Yeah.
been good about mirroring
Yes.
our zoning ordinances.
Francisville is a little different in how they want to stay connected in regards to our zoning throughout the county.
Good or bad?
Independent.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
You know,
And
That's one of the most politically tactful things I've ever seen.
right?
Oh, that's amazing.
And with phase 3 discussing about zoning plan review, so you're anticipating the ordinance, the Unified Development Ordinance, best management practices in regards to language?
yes, absolutely. So that would be kind of, again, we're not rewriting the code, but we are giving a comprehensive review, looking at what is the best, best practices for this, and now, there's the first step of, does the current code look back to the old plan, and then, hey, the old plan, we're gonna update this old plan. Now there may be certain inconsistencies.
Okay.
So we're really trying to make sure that, hey, on the heels of this, the laundry list of items you're gonna have to address for zoning, or else you might have some legal challenges to somebody comes forward and says, hey, well, my future land use map says this, but zoning says this. We wanna make sure.
Okay, that's excellent to hear. Okay.
And that's where I think the legal piece comes in. Do write code so we understand those things. And, if there's case law, things you want us to look at, and you know how to dig through that and just make sure, that's a little bit of a finesse thing. I always have to use, well, how can you ensure my zoning is defensible? I don't want legal challenges. Well, people can bring legal challenges. It's just will it stand up in court, and how you increase your chances of success.
Okay.
And also, just to be frank, a lot of times smaller communities get picked up by developers who have deep pockets and pay returns. Sometimes communities will roll over because they can't afford to. So you want that to.
Okay, and that will include like Indiana code review and up to, okay.
Absolutely. That's kind of how we approach these things. We look at it through what does your statutes, state level require. That's kind of our marching orders, and we put that in the contract. These would be items.
Excuse me.
Last piece, most important is that implementation plan. What are the policies, partnerships, funding strategies to get it done? Who's acting when? What's the short list? Near term, medium term, long term. And then obviously with all that, we have a final approvals. Our experiences. We're doing a good job of engaging people up front, getting the boards and commissions engaged as you outlined in the RFP. The approval process is smoother because everybody's had a seat at the table together. It's not going to be consultant off doing his own thing for 12 months, comes in, what's this? Right? They're going to see the themes. Yeah, there's always going to be some line item vetoes, if you will. I have the ability to do a line item veto, but there's always a couple markups. But I think with the input there, we'll have some. Just touch on some other things, differentiators. We do have a lot of data tools at our disposal. One of them here is something called Placer AI. Again, it's just part of our overhead, so we can run as many queries as you like. It's not an additional cost to you. This is something that tracks cell phone data. Big retailers use it. Also, a lot of site selectors use it for workforce to see who's in an area. Basically, a certain percentage of people have permission set on their phone that you can track. You're buying my data somehow. And there's an algorithm, and this company has put something together where it understands where people stay. Not down to their house, and kind of makes it generic by census block. But based on those census block data, we know approximately how much these people earn, what's their demographics, it's all extrapolated. And what was kind of interesting is we looked at your county, and you mentioned tourism board getting more active, and certainly with all the parks and community assets, nature reserves you have, that makes a lot of sense. What we found, and this was just for Winnemac itself within the entire jurisdiction, a resident's income, at 46,000 versus employees coming in at 58,000 versus out-of-market visitors was up to 62,000. So people coming into the community are bringing more buying power. Pretty simplistic. Obviously, we can do a much more detailed analysis. I'll say any kind of chain restaurant or store is preloaded here. We just click on it. It'll tell you who comes, what time of day, how far they come from. This heat map is just showing where you get visitors from other counties. It can be helpful to let you understand, what the buying power is and where there might be voids in the market. And again, comprehensive plan will not say open a grocery store or corner. It might say have some additional land in the future land use map for commercial. And that's what we're really trying to get to at a little more of a sophisticated level. It also has the ability for parks and areas like that. You get some really good data as long as you have people visiting those parks. Hey, where does this bring people into? Benefiting, understanding where dollars are coming in. So it's just another tool we use. Our business stakeholders and our tourism bureaus, redevelopment bureaus, they get really excited by this. So usually we can even part of an agenda in a meeting. We'll ask them in advance, maybe at the first meeting, hey, what kind of questions would you like answered?
You know, we haven't actually done anything, but our tourism council actually has talked about Placer AI in the past. It's somewhere on the radar.
Yeah, you have it here for a year and you get a whole bunch of questions. It is a powerful tool. It's just another piece of input on the process of making decisions. We talked about our ROI decision matrix, kind of just folding into implementation and actionability. This is a sample from Butler County, one meeting that we talked about, where this was finance authority, so they were very much like your redevelopment commission, focused on kind of one area of the lens, but we had 4 different priorities for them: invest, administer, promote, facilitate, and kind of their 1 to 6 month goals were to really just empower this organization that had been rebranded and giving new marching orders by the commissioners and board. An execution phase, and that's 7 to 24 months, starting to be a little bit more outward facing and proactive on community projects, and then a 3 to 5 year expansion category, which is just kind of season. So, not that this would be your plan, but this is kind of that outward facing piece. You want to have something that's easily understandable by your stakeholders, politicians, lay people that might not nerd out over Indiana code and planning. You know, you mentioned the development finance piece of this and getting involved. This is an example from the Appalachian community along the Ohio River that we helped with their opportunity zones. Again, some of these tools you're not eligible for, but there are still state programs that we can try to match up to some of your different project types. Those would be identified during the planning process. I suspect there's always a need for workforce housing. There may be need for job skills training in the area, tourism, certainly. I think that's an actual. We'll ask Sky. You're waiting to see if I did anything. Another piece of this that I don't think a lot of planning consultants think of is you have to be able to advocate. And while we're not lobbyists, we work with lobbyists, and we're often the ones feeding them information to support a project or initiative, state or federal. And what I mean by that is I'll have a lot of communities, how I get involved is they'll come to the lobbyists and say, I want money for a project. And lobbyists will go, a good lobbyist, an honest one, will say, do you have a plan? Do you have a community input? No, but I want the money. Well, you should probably do a plan. You should probably show you prioritize this. You probably should show you the communities. And we'll come in, do a plan, and we'll also work with that lobbyist to understand what might resonate within the legislature and at the executive level, whether that be governor or federal administration. So we can help shape some plan recommendations to be competitive for the chase, whatever that chase might be. Again, first step is what do you want as a community? Now let's reverse engineer a project to get money. But at that point, there probably will be funding sources, programs, initiatives that we can match up. We can take a proactive role in play. So this might be thinking about post-plan. How do you have a strategy to advocate for your projects? Are you doing things where you're getting down to the state house with your business community? Or maybe, it's too much to ask from just the county. Maybe you're getting together with some regional partners to have this. Whatever the right structure is for you. But that's something we do also.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So if you're looking through comprehensive plans, it looks like the timeline is generally about 12, 14 months
Yes.
for each company. But what I hear you talking about are things that maybe move beyond the comprehensive plan, that this doesn't sit on a shelf. So what is your involvement beyond, okay, got it, it's packaged, here you are, there's your comprehensive plan. Sounds like you don't have to exit that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, that's correct.
Yeah. So a lot of communities, and this isn't you have to do this, and unless you hire us for an add-on, you're not going to be successful. You can be empowered to just take this and run. Nathan has a matrix, an interactive document. He can go and convene and get these boards together and do this himself. If you'd like to have us, we'd love to have you keep us around and assist in some need. That could be defined at certain month intervals. It could be just, hey, as needed, task-based, there's no dollar commitment, but we understand this is the hourly rate of this task. If I need you, I reach out. We do engage multiple different ways with communities. Sometimes there's several follow-up projects. what I'm showing here is we want to give you the tools to empower you to grow. And that means considering things like advocacy as part of the plan and having, it might just be 2 or 3 pages dedicated to what does that mean for us, who could we get together and run with this. Some of it, like the implementation matrix, hey, at the end of the day, Nathan, county's going to have a spreadsheet. And yeah, I can take this and do a save as for next time. Hey, we don't have money to hire you guys. I'm going to do this on my own. A lot of communities have staff and can run with these things. So it doesn't mean you have to hire us beyond that 14 months. We'd love to help if there's special projects, and sometimes you just need additional pay. Got tight budgets, can't always necessarily bring up and hire somebody, additional staff. So it just, whatever you need, we're available.
And I can speak to it from the time when I was city manager of Madeira, and we had hired Envision to do the comprehensive plan. They said there was an implementation piece that was the piggyback with the original cost of the plan. And Amy's team, as he said before, would come in on a monthly basis to the Planning Commission and update on what was going on, but also then assisted with the grant funding process. He alluded to the fact that the return on the investment for the comprehensive plan for the city of Madeira was extensive. I can tell you that the city received over $10 million in grant funding from state, federal, county jurisdictions for a variety of projects: parks, streetscapes, utility, just everyday infrastructure project, because we had a plan that we could show to whoever was handing out the money. Say, we have this documented, this has been approved, this has been vetted, and the people that were granting the funds were very much willing to do that. So that it was a terrific effort on that in that part, and that's something that we get is an add-on piece to this if you feel that's appropriate.
So kind of a follow-up, Jenny, thank you for that question. And guys, thank you for a very thorough answer, because that gets to a question that has been in my mind. In the RFP, we said, we were hoping that part of this process would give us some guidance on making sure we have the right number of staff in the right locations with the right description. Obviously, at the end of the day, budget is going to be a critical component of that. No matter, we might have all 3 commissioners and all 7 council members on board. We need these, but what is your approach for helping us to make sure that finance, budget permitting, we are getting the right people in the right roles with the right job descriptions? We're not just creating an assistant community development director or an assistant planning director for the sake of creating, but making sure that we are getting the right circles in the right round holes instead of trying to put a square peg into a round hole, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I think that speaks directly to some of our, so we do also, in addition to comprehensive planning, which, has an element of strategic planning, obviously, we do sometimes help communities with strategic and just organizational planning. So it's very much about, these are your departments, these are your reporting structures, budgets. I was actually just got off the phone with somebody. It's like, I don't think you should have Parks and Tree Commission under Public Works. Those are 2 different things. It's a big enough city, but these need to be split out like things. But to answer your question, benchmarking, so looking at comparable communities and counties. Obviously, for you guys being in the smaller round statewide, you might be going a little bit further, or it might be neighboring communities that are similarly situated. Some of that's what resonates. Who is it? Sometimes there's a mathematical element to that, and then also just a cultural link. I don't want to be compared to them because I perceive them as lesser. But we would look and benchmark against other communities, look at their reporting structures, looking at their percentage of budget allocated to different departments. We see this all the time with, police and fire is the most important thing, public safety. And we're like, you do a good job there, but you might want to increase your investment in the community and economic development a little bit, because we know if you bring in some more jobs and get this light, you're going to see increased safety. That's also going to get. So those are the kind of things we can help you with on that side. But absolutely, the other piece, to your point, fitting the right person in the position. Job descriptions, search processes, those are all things actually for the Butler County Finance Authority. Those are just attachments to the plan. Here's the job description. here's exactly what we're looking for in this person. Here is, how to get the word out, and, advertise it. So we serve as owners reps for a lot of these communities where we just have these ad hoc tasks. They're exactly what. As far as, who those individuals might be, sometimes we've had success during the community input process, especially the stakeholder piece. We find that there might be somebody at a nonprofit that's a partner. We're dynamic. They really showed some passion. Gosh, I'd love to have them at the county or city. Let's bring them in. The flip side, we've had steering committee members, volunteers on focus groups, become members of local planning commissions because they got introduced to the people. So you can, cultivate organically the next generation of leaders as far as plans.
And Nathan, to piggyback on what Emil just said, is of course as a former city manager, I can certainly assist with that process because I was involved in that for 40 plus years in developing organizations and trying to find the best people for the best team. So that's something I can certainly do.
So I hope we're all right on time.
Yeah, we still have 20-ish minutes,
Okay.
15 to 20 minutes. I don't know if you have any more slides you want to go through, or if you...
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Go Bearcats, by the way.
Oh,
And
okay.
I lived in Butler County, so I that was a project I can only imagine in itself because it was very developing county.
I actually
loved.
suckered Abby into joining the planning commission because I realized she had gone to Cincinnati for planning, and not too many people around here have planning education.
So you went to DA?
I did DAP. Yep, back in the day.
I took a number of courses at that when I was there.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah, same. What do you see, like at the end of your work with us as like a successful project when you look back at it? Like what would happen here that you would call this a successful project?
Yeah, great question. So I think hopefully you've got people mobilized and excited to say, hey, let's take the next steps. Actually work on this laundry list of items, a short list, a prioritized list. But folks are excited about their roles. There's active participation there. And we have some dollars flowing into the communities, some quick wins where we say, hey, remember that comprehensive plan we spent money on? Oh, actually, we just got $1 million grant. That's a 10-on-1 return on investment right there. Maybe that's ambitious. I would suspect, though, that you can see that type of, even if it's incrementally in different grants and funding sources, that is a big one. I'd also love to see if, whether it's local communities or the county themselves, with development regulations, taking that next step, getting some of those things updated. Maybe some nonprofit partnerships with the county where, one of your philanthropic partners is starting to invest and mentioned the investment dollars, and we're starting to leverage that and having more impact. We're aligning investments based on this. That's more of a perfect world, but that would excite us to say, hey, we have this vision for the county, and now we're all in our different ways, whether that's sweat equity and having in-kind services or staffing, software support, building space, or whether it's actual dollars towards projects. That would be exciting to us. And I just, on this last slide here, what we believe is our advantage, some of the things that, Tom talked about, this community Madera outside of Cincinnati. There were things that were not capital projects, even though they got over $10 million, and things like congressionally directed spending, what we used to call an earmark, but can't anymore. State capital budget, MPO funding sources that go flow from the feds down to the MPOs. They also had, those qualitative pieces. They did a community brand. They never had a community brand. A consultant and had a separate process on the heels of it. They did a Tree City USA designation. They have a tree commission to take those steps in legislation to support their tree community. They created what's called a designated outdoor refreshment area, block with alcohol within a couple blocks of the establishment. They got a building on the National Register of Historic Places that enabled them to leverage potentially historic tax credits in the state. So these are some of the complementary pieces beyond, just the dollars of the plan, that return on investment, some of the mobilization, if you will. So those are all things.
And one of the things that Amy briefly touched upon, that again is going to be an important component to the plan, is to have a fiscal impact analysis of any changes in land use that might be recommended or implemented along the way, because changes in land use can either increase revenues or potentially decrease revenues. And there's going to be a ripple effect in that in the budget for not just the communities, but the county as a whole. So that's one of the things that we'll take a look at. We'll look at the changes in the land use. We'll model what kind of development either increases revenue or lack of development decreases revenue, and then how that might change public services that are necessary along the way. And so those are things, again, that are going to be very important as far as the decision-making process that as far as policy is concerned, is going to be for the plan.
I have a question. Why are you interested in working with Pulaski County?
Well, the honest answer was I met Nathan at a conference and he said, we have a comprehensive plan. I'm going to give you an RFP. So that was the first start. We had a connection. And I said, well, we'll see. Because, if I had $1 for every time someone said that at a conference and then never sent me anything, I'd be fairly wealthy. Not fairly wealthy. Nathan followed up and said, hey, if you're interested. So we were excited about that and someone followed up. We saw a community that has some core assets. I think you've got good bones in your various small towns. You have the river, you have your nature preserves, you have some interest from solar developers and economic activity. So I think there's some real planning to do. You're probably a little bit of a crossroads going forward. There are unfortunately some communities that just are checking box when they're doing a plan. That you had county leadership at statewide economic development conference that needs to be interested in your future. Here, you're not sending somebody down to Indianapolis to go to those conferences. So at a bare minimum, we saw interest. We liked what you had in your RFP. We thought there were some development finance pieces, prioritization pieces that were of particular interest to us. Have a public finance background, self on the legal background. Hey, are we just, again, from the planning level, setting up some of these partnerships and structured programs? That's interesting to us. So, kind of a mix of opportunities, but those are some things.
Tom, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Just off the top of my head, I'd be able to look into the future accurately, to be able to see beyond tomorrow or next week. That would, for me, that would be very important, both personally and professionally.
A good answer. Hey, we never had that question before.
I like that, David. Thank you.
When you start doing the public input and all the community surveys, is there an education piece to everyone explaining what a comprehensive plan is and how it works? Okay.
Yeah, first meeting is a lot of just public education and here's why we're here. Here's your previous plan from 2012. And yes, absolutely, just level setting and really an orientation. And that does throw some people off because they come to the first public meeting thinking, where's the plan? I said, oh, we don't have a plan yet. We're embarking on the process. We're inviting you to join us. At the heels of this meeting, here's a survey. We'd like you to take that first step. Here's the next times we're going to meet, whether we have those dates set or we know they're coming on the calendar by the month. Here's events we're going to engage with. Here's community partners that are going to be stakeholders. Here's ways you can get this out of your social media feeds, any kind of neighborhood groups, civic groups, churches, or whatever you're engaging with to get the word out. But yes, that first meeting is a lot of here's the process, here's how we're going to ask our input, these are the topics we're going to cover. It's not a here's the plan or even outline. It's not trying to say.
And so when you start that, before we even start having public input and surveys, there's some sort of piece that you can give the county so that we can start having some sort of advertisement or so that they know kind of what to expect prior to this even starting.
Yes, so absolutely, that's our role as consultant to provide you narrative for email blasts, social media posts, website that might be more in depth. If you want us to have a website for the project, we have the software, it's just something we can do. If you want it on your own page, we can feed you the content. However, we're flexible on that. If you want us to come and present, I know we have several board and commission meetings on there, some of those might be more in that orientation phase. We're happy to come in and make those appearances. I do get the question, well, if there's an additional meeting that wasn't in the RFP or scope, how can you price match? If you put in the time and do a little bit more with the meetings and outreach, the back end, the approvals are just a little. The bill comes due eventually, you gotta put in the time. So I'd rather meet with people, hear their input, and spend a lot of time doing revisions and markup.
So over the course of the 12 months, how many times actually
I would think we probably need to be monthly, in the county, just based on, I'm cheating, but, that's the list from your RFP. So, that's quite a few meetings. I don't see a month where we're done. In the county, and, I tend to, just for efficiency, a month might be, hey, I'm here, 3 straight days.
Right.
So I don't want to say that's 12 days. It might be easily 20 days, but the intent is to be here to get engaged. I think we talked to you. That's the interesting part of my job. I don't have a superpower request, but I do enjoy just going and seeing the communities, learning how to pronounce the names, seeing what makes them tick. It's part of the fun.
Emil, question, so this is our plan, it's not your plan, but I don't think any of us are fully immune from leaving our thumbprint on something we work in. 1, 2, 3, 4 words, could you kind of describe your overarching worldview, perspective, philosophy when it comes to the planning process, whether it's the process itself or what the community looks like, or even what school of planning you affiliate with philosophically? How do you approach work?
So I'd say we are plan facilitators. We facilitate a process where we're gathering a whole bunch of input. We are not shoving the recommendation down your throat, but what we do provide, we do something other than listen and write down. We distill that, but we also provide examples from other communities, so best practices, case studies, and many of options, programs that might be applicable to you, not just a laundry list of everything under the sun, but ones that might meet, size, scale, cultural fit. The other thing is we do a lot of data and present a whole bunch of information for you. Sometimes people can interpret data differently. That's our job, is to tell you sometimes cold hard facts, because we will have people that say, I want a grocery store in my town. I want this type of development. You as a rural community, in some cases, may not have the rooftops to support that. And we can tell those hard truths, and you might understand that as county leadership, but sometimes there's a benefit in having an outside consultant come in and be bearer of bad news for certain. Or this type of infrastructure project will never happen. We're not going to widen this road, build a highway, whatever it might be, those things come up. So we can be the bearer of bad news. Level set. Ultimately, our job is to put all these things together. This is your plan, and put together a document you feel comfortable with and have ownership and pride. And yeah, it was prepared with the help of a consultant, but we as a community are ready to run with this and we're excited. That was not pretty cool.
What questions were you expecting that we did not ask?
That's a good question. I thought we've seen it increasingly to keep it rural, not in my backyard, NIMBYism as some call it. There's a new acronym of planning organizations since I just came up with bananas. It's just basically nothing. It was a step on NIMBY, step up. Data centers, anything like that come up for you guys?
Not yet.
That's one that's been front and center for certain communities, and just by location, I'm not shocked that it hasn't.
Battery plants.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess just that, keep it rural sentiment, is that strong here?
Well, from my perspective, now granted, I'm not government, right? I'm nonprofit. My perspective is that we identify as an agrarian community,
Okay.
but our industry is actually manufacturing.
Yes.
But people don't think we're a manufacturing community.
Mhm.
So I would say, you know, people identify as rural agrarian, but I don't know that holds true in how we behave.
That's fascinating. And the job numbers do support
They
this.
support that.
And do you
So
think,
politically correct.
I am
Choose
just,
your words wisely.
I'm just, you know, I do my job well.
yeah, it's interesting. I think I guess I'll pose a question myself. One thing that comes up a lot, and going back to rural communities and what is rural, that we will have kind of hate. We don't want anything to change. And going to Tom's point of fiscal impact analysis, if you don't have any investment in the community and you're not doing any type of development, whatever might be conducive, over time, just to maintain your infrastructure, maintain your public facilities, that's going to start to fall on residential property.
There's a degradation of services or an increase in taxes, one of the two.
And as they age and leave the workforce, that issue gets exacerbated. So there needs to be kind of a balanced growth approach. There always needs to be some kind of growth, whether it's just replacing in-kind in the towns and infill, redevelopment, or whether it's a little bit within that 2-mile radius, or whether it's a solar or some other type of project, very much a rural area. At some point, you want to move the tax burden to the companies, people that are making the big ones, so that it doesn't all. I think most people can get to that point, depending on the development type, the intensity, whether it's in the backyard. It's tough, but I think people will get to that point. So I think that's part of the challenge. The other thing that comes up sometimes in rural areas is this idea of property rights. What does a property right? I'll have some very interesting discussions with people with, I don't like that zoning, it's too restrictive, or you're just stripping away my property rights. Okay, you want multifamily housing in your neighborhood? Oh, no. You're taking away my property right to develop beautiful and sort of, whatever it might be, and people will start to step back. So understand there's some balance in the role of, hey, there's a plan, we have to have one, we have a development ordinance, tweaking it to meet whatever your level of comfort is with government. So that sometimes does come up. People just get a little bit concerned about government.
Well, you're talking about transformative change and mindset change, which is hard and scary, and gotta have a plan. And
one of the things that will, again, obviously our role in this is to help you provide that education to the constituents, to help create the appropriate narrative that you want to have disseminated amongst the people.
So when this is all done, originally when we were going to try and do the company we were going to partner with, which is our
Regional Planning Commission.
The Regional Planning Commission. Sure.
So will you, and then if that did not happen, so obviously now we're here, and I was wondering when this is all done, will you, since we're not having a grant through them to help do this, will you work with them with our comp plan? So if they reach out to you or you need more information, like that's not ever going to be an issue.
Oh, no, we are used to working with government partners, providing the GIS files, giving them, whatever help, questions, hey, if it's on the back end, hey, what was the thought process behind this?
Right.
I know this is in the plan, but we pick up the phone. If not, I don't think we'd be
In business.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a question out loud.
No, absolutely. No, and we don't feel threatened by, oh, that's potentially work that we can get. We want you to be
By
successful.
that time, that should be the easy part of the work.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
So, Tuesday is Indiana's primary election day. And we have one of our 3 commissioner seats, 4 of our county council seats up. At least 2 of those are going to turn over definitely because the incumbents are not running for re-election. All 5 of them could. We don't know what it, but, and realistically, the primary with potentially one exception is going to make how do you handle like changes, especially potentially significant changes in leadership in the middle of a planned process?
So I think we need to be intentional and talk to you, outside of the public forum context of, okay, we kind of know based on the primary, sounds like the primary will be very close. So at least we'll have an indication, but at the same time, we can't pause till next year to get started this process. So I think we need to maybe be proactive about some individual meetings with those folks, the anticipated, the winners of the primary that we think are going to easily win or be unopposed, just to get their gut feel as stakeholders. I don't think that's unreasonable. Obviously, again, influence and input is one of those questions on how do you handle it. We know that the actual approval of the plan would be with the new commissioners after the So ultimately, we can't necessarily direct the whole plan towards somebody that's going to be in office till we have to acknowledge that they are elected officials. So it's a little bit of a tightrope. And I think we need to get their take to see if they're, philosophically in a different spot. Some of that you might know just based on their campaign or something. But I think we have to be intentional, be proactive.
And Nathan, we've actually run into that before. We did a comprehensive plan for Brookville, Ohio, outside Dayton, and there was some turnover. Their city council, we knew that it was going to be right. Actually, it was toward the end of the plan, but they were involved with some of the discussion, so we knew where they stood, and were able to make sure that got integrated into the plan. So.
All right, just a couple of minutes till we're out of time. Anyone have any last questions for the gentleman? Any last words of wisdom you guys want to impart? I mean, like, we got a couple minutes. I'm not going to shut you down now, but anything you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just thank you for inviting us. Nathan, thank you for providing the RFP. Very much look forward to working with you. These comprehensive plan projects are exciting. I will, one thing we didn't talk about real quick is that when I was city manager in Madeira, I pushed really hard for almost 20 years to get a plan with the city council. Finally, a gentleman got on our planning commission who was in tune with what I was trying to accomplish, and that's how we ended up hiring Envision. I was asked to come on board with them when I retired, but again, working on several comprehensive plans now. It's a terrific process. I know the success that it can bring to a community, having experienced it firsthand, so that we would look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just really want to thank you for your time and attention. I thought it was a great question.
Yeah, terrific question.
Yeah.
I never thought about my super bar before, Nathan. That was very good.
I'm glad he answered it intelligently because I'm like a little kid. I was going to go Wolverine. But you're not familiar with that. I'll ignore that part.
Would you mind if it's downloading the presentation on your computer so I can share it with everyone?
Absolutely.
To review as everyone's doing?
Yes. So you just want to get it right.
Go Bearcats.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So you went through that?
I did.
Did you? Okay.
Yep, I did.
So my master's degree in public administration, I took a number of community planning courses out of DAF, but that was back in the late 70s.
Right before it changed buildings.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, driving through Butler County now, like so different than
Oh, yes.
growing
Oh,
up
I
too.
can imagine.
It's
I
crazy.
can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, so I can get my, so I can get that
I
back.
need to get you, yeah. Yeah, I figured it's best, it's just always better to keep things separate.
No, I 1,000, yeah.
I'm glad you remembered that. That's funny. It's just one of those things. All right.
What do you mean, what have I been doing?
Been doing good.
I'm always up to no good. Big trouble.
Good, how are you? Corey. Hello. Good to see you. Good to see you. Man, if I were any better, that would too. Do you have anything to present or just?
May 26th.
So,
May 26th.
Anywhere across here where you guys are comfortable?
okay, very good.
Just gonna be, talking about one at a time.
Let's do that.
I think he's doing that. That's all right.
Oh, yeah.
This is good. Put it at the end. Make sure they're standing. Not sitting down.
We'll be fine, we can just slide these down, there's plenty of room. Corey, do you mind popping that back up? We just because our YouTube gets glitchy, I can't explain it.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, for some reason, if we don't have all of the things on, it just gets glitchy and weird. I don't want people to have a seizure watching our.
Did I mess something
You're good.
It was not, it was live.
And it's- Actually, if you guys aren't presenting it. You guys are ready, our team can do quick introductions. Laura's acting up.
Hi, I'm Sheila. I sit on the council and I also sit on the CDC board.
Mike T, on Settlement Council.
Hi, I'm Leanne Wright. I serve as Executive Director for the Community Foundation of Placer County.
And I'm Carla Redwick, the building inspector and plan administrator.
And Abby Dickey, I'm on the BZA and the planning.
Well, thank you all. I know we're probably gonna wait for Nathan too, but we can wait a few more minutes for Nathan.
Nathan Roder, I'm Community Development Director. I've had at least two before today. Glad you're here.
Well, thank you all for your time today and for this interview process.
Thank you.
Putting things on paper can be one thing, but having it in person where you get to talk to people and kind of get a feel for how they operate and how they interact with you as kind of a leadership team, but also if we have some public here, how we engage the public. It's pretty important as we go through this comprehensive plan. Real quick, some of you met, a few of us in the past interview, but have been this minute with HWC. I serve as a client liaison, so during the project, if there's different touch points that you need to communicate something to me that I need to communicate to the team, that's my role during the project and then even follow up after the project. Corey is our Vice President of Landscape Architecture and Planning. Rachel is our, I always kind of have the title, the studio planning lead. She manages all the planners. And then Adam here is our project manager. You might remember previously we had Jennifer with us. And we thought, Jennifer's on a couple other projects still with us. She's doing the town of Remington comp plan and a few other comp plans. Adam had some resource time come up, and Adam's come off some, as you see on his resume here, some similar projects like maybe here in Pulaski County. And so that skill set and that experience, we thought would be really valuable to have him on this project if you all were to choose us. And so we brought Adam, and you'll get a chance to meet Adam as he talks through some of these boards that we're going to go through today. But our agenda, we're kind of doing kind of simple today. Instead of doing a PowerPoint presentation and kind of going through our proposal page by page or section by section, we want this to be a little bit more open and engaged and open forum. We do have some boards we're going to go through and talk about different parts of the comp plan and how you all can be really successful in doing it. But we wanted to save some time at the end so we can have some conversations about what's really important to you all to get accomplished. What are some things that we ought to know as we might come into this service for you all, so we can be better prepared when this does kick off. And so we'll save a lot of time at the end of this presentation for you to ask us and grill these three as much as you want. But as we think about HWC, and hopefully you had a chance to read our proposal and get a little bit of information about our company. We do a lot of comp plans around the state. We're pretty well known in a lot of communities because of our history and the outcomes that come from those comp plans. It seems like we get typically brought into communities for a couple of different reasons. Sometimes because things are like on fire or about to be on fire, and they want some people that have some experience that can come in and navigate those difficult conversations. We've been in, like, these folks came to my county when I was like in Nathan's spot in my county a few years ago, and we had something that really divided our county. And boy, sometimes I felt bad for Corey as he's trying to take the temperature of the room, but also have those open conversations. And sometimes they were tense, but then getting past that and navigating it to a good outcome. And so they've all got really good experience of doing that type of public engagement, even just working with different leadership groups to kind of navigate this. That's one reason. A second reason we sometimes get chosen is maybe a community's got a really big goal or objective that they're going to go after. Maybe it's a big state funding thing like READY or Stellar. Maybe it's federal funding, or it's a Lilly endowment type of funding that they're going after. And they know that the people that are going to give them money want to be able to see a real well-written plan and a whole lot of community support behind it, so then they can put their funds behind that plan as well. And so we get called to do that type of work quite a bit as well. So I don't know if those fit Pulaski County. If they do, great. We think we could be the great team to come help with one of those items, but we'll figure it out today as we talk to you during the back and forth part. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Rachel, and she's going to lead us through a few parts of it.
We've got some fun stuff we're going to kick this interview off with, and I will explain this, so don't be confused yet. So one of the first challenges that we have when we start a comprehensive plan is figuring out a way to get the public interested and raise awareness of the plan. So we like to dive in with the community and really figure out a way that we can, kind of pique the public's curiosity. A lot of times when the public is coming in to start working with us on a comprehensive plan, it's the first time that they've ever gone through this process. And it might be the first time that some of you have gone through this process as well, because sometimes this only happens once a decade. So we know that there's a lot of public education that has to go along with the comprehensive planning process. So we like to try to make it fun, make it approachable. So as we were researching Pulaski County, one of the things that kept coming up was this idea of the sandhill crane. And what we learned is that, you guys are the hub of the Midwest for sandhill crane migration, which we thought was kind of an interesting topic that maybe we can pull some inspiration from. With Jasper, Pulaski County, or Jasper, Pulaski Fish and Wildlife area, we learned that like 20 to 30,000 cranes during peak migration season come along here, which obviously has an influence on tourism and economic development and those types of things. So we kind of pulled on that. We learned also that, you know, the origami crane is kind of an interesting thing that represents prosperity and good fortune. And we thought that was kind of a neat sentiment then to kind of tie into this comprehensive planning process. So as you can see, we've got your little origami cranes as part of this. And we know that, you know, origami and cranes, like this may not be the symbol that we want to use for the comprehensive plan, but we just want to illustrate that, you know, this is a way, we love being creative, we love being able to be approachable to the public. So this is one way that we can kind of pull the public and, you know, get interested. If it's not this, we will brainstorm with you all and we will figure out something else cool that we can use. Question, sure.
So the flyer that Ben passed out
Yes.
mentions that you are a multidisciplinary firm.
Yes.
So was this made in-house?
We now have a department of origami. And yes, we did do these in-house. We designed them in-house and folded them in-house as well. So, you know, the idea with this is, like I said, having something that's approachable for the public to, you know, feel fun, you know, feel confident about coming up to a booth at the county fair. And I'm going to pass this out to you. So this idea of the crane too is that when you have a wish, that you make the wish and you fold your origami crane, and then that shows that you are, that helps show your dedication to that wish. And there's also this idea that if you have 1,000 wishes and you create 1,000 origami cranes, that those wishes will come true. And again, we thought that was maybe a cool tie-in to this comprehensive plan, because here we are, we're going to be asking the public ideas about what they want for their future in Pulaski County. So imagine this, you know, us being at a fair or a farmer's market. We you know, have these papers, you have these origami cranes kind of hanging out. People are like, what is this? I want one. We ask them for their wish. We have them take this and either fold it there or take it home and fold it. These end up at places like, you know, somewhere at the grocery store on a shelf, and people are like curious about it. We could put a QR code on these things, have the website so that people can, you know, learn more, and it kind of spreads that awareness organically. I've been in so many situations where we get to the end of a process and people show up at the adoption meeting and they're like, we had no clue this was going on. And so, you know, we're not going to catch everyone. You know, there are people who truly live under a rock, and we're not going to be able to find them to tell them about the comp plan. But, you know, generally in the county, if we can raise awareness through a fun mechanism like this, that helps bring more people to the table that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been. I mean, I was brainstorming even on the way up here. I'm like, how fun would this be to have these cranes and have a high school art class do some type of display at the courthouse with it? And then you're bringing all those other kids to the table that maybe otherwise wouldn't even know what a comprehensive. So that's kind of our, you know, one of the things I think we're strong at HWC is, you know, trying to find something that connects with the community that then, you know, can kind of be woven through this planning process so that it's a recognizable plan. You know, they know that with this being like a year-long planning process, having something strong at the beginning that ties to the end is really important so that people understand that this is all part of the same process. So public awareness, super important. I'm going to kick it off to Adam now. Actually, you can kind of see we've integrated that into some of these boards that we have up here on how we would have that symbol kind of woven through, you know, a project website, on our flyers, you know, maybe even the actual document at the end of the road, so that you can see how that's a strong piece that's woven through. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Adam. He's going to tell you more about some of our public engagement opportunities that will happen after we kind of start raising this awareness.
Yeah, so on the front end, after we've really just tried to elevate the visibility of this process and now we're kicking it off within the community, we're going to use a range of different engagement mechanisms to really ensure that this is a people-centered process. So it is, you know, things like being at the county fair, being at the farmer's market. We will hold community workshops that can be organized as more of a, you know, facilitated small table discussion. Other events may be more open house in format to allow people to come and go as their schedule allows. We'll pair that in-person or those in-person opportunities with online engagements, online survey. We use an interactive mapping tool that will link from the project website. All of our comprehensive plan processes get a unique project website that is maintained throughout the process by us, where again, we'll put advertisements out, direct traffic to the website that then links to the survey. Interactive mapping tools like a Google map. You can navigate around, zoom in, zoom out, leave different place markers, area of interest, concern. I'd love to see this here. Then other people that go to the map can thumbs up and thumbs down and leave other reactions. We'll post meeting notices, draft documents, presentations, all that goes on the website. But like I said, balancing that in-person and online engagement. We also know there needs to be some really targeted, not just the broad, hey, community, come to our event, really targeted engagement with key interest groups, agriculture community. We always want to get students involved. Every one of these processes, right, it's like, we're not planning for those of us in the room, we're planning for the next generation. And so really cognizant and concentrated effort to engage students. We did a comprehensive plan for Greenwood, just south of Indianapolis, where we got engaged with the school and we're then actually able to do multiple sessions with the high school student government group. We went to the high school, met with them at their regular meeting time, and that was really successful. Like I said, using the online activities as well. And really it's this, we have to make it interesting and fun. And our goal is more people at every meeting, right? As the conversation grows around this, it's not, oh, another one of those meetings. It's, yes, there's another comp plan discussion. I went to the open house last time, my friend wasn't there, I'm gonna drag her, hear her along. So through this engagement, it really is going to allow us to collect that input on the community vision. And, if the exercise Rachel was talking about, or we did a similar one in Zionsville, it was 6-word story. So what's your 6-word story for Zionsville? We are able to pull, like writing a countywide vision statement is really tough to make it unique, right? It's easy to make it sound applicable to a whole bunch of different counties, but to make it unique can be difficult. Exercises like this make it so much easier because we can pull words and phrases directly from the people who are participating in these exercises. We have it documented. Zionsville, I've got a stack of these 6-word stories. Some of them are in the plan, and just, again, using how people refer to their community to get that into the vision makes it really important. Generating that buy-in, growing, the plan champions, so that when the plan's done and adopted and the real work of implementation starts, there's now a group of people who have been engaged, who feel a sense of ownership in it, and are going to hold public leaders accountable for implementing that.
Question.
Yeah.
In this engagement process, how do you distinguish between input and influence?
Yeah, so with engagement, we're always also balancing that with data wherever we can. And it is certainly a balance, right? Because if we're too focused on, or really what I would say is taking engagement and turning it into data so that we can say, look, at the community workshop, these were the consistent themes, and we can show that and how they align to the survey. So it is not just one interest group or the loudest voice is what we're taking away. That said, we can't rely too much on data because then it's not people-centered. Or if someone is really afraid, right, data isn't going to alleviate that. If you're afraid of flying, I say, well, statistically, you're more likely to get hurt in a car accident. You're not going to say, oh, good point, I'm not afraid of flying. So, approaching it with that understanding, I will say, the community survey, we're not going to claim that it is statistically significant. To do that would cost a whole bunch of money to reach the right number of people. But we have done this in a number of communities, and we understand how to find the common themes that we see across different groups and engagement opportunities. But we also know, you know, we'll see some of the same people across those opportunities. It's maybe a little bit more art than science.
How have you handled, you done some of the same type of work,
Carefully.
Yeah.
We find it interesting. We'll do a lot of times for our workshops and our open houses. We do workshops and open houses for that reason, because if we do a public meeting, sometimes there's those that grandstand and kind of derail a meeting. So we try to do some opportunities where it's more low key, that, you know, individuals can come and leave messages on a board, or they can have one-on-one conversations, so that it does, like I said, it just doesn't derail or overtake the meeting. Or influence too much. You know, the influence is kind of not limited, but maybe contained a little bit. So
actively seeking to bring people who are traditionally not at the table, and seeking those voices.
yes.
Yeah, that is really hard to
I'll also say, I think the flip side is a little true too, where if we know there's going to be someone who could present a challenge, maybe let's say 12 months from now, and we're trying to get this plan adopted, we want to get them engaged in the appropriate way early, so that they don't show up and say, I wasn't included, you know, things like that. So it definitely takes an intentional engagement strategy. Like I said, what we're trying to do, I just kind of heard today, is show how we approach that. Ultimately, we would want to sit down early on in the process and really make sure we are developing that tailored strategy with you. And that's actually kind of the end of mine, so I'm going to turn it over to Corey.
So got to meet several of you guys when we first started pursuing this, and had some really good conversations about this. And I think as we went into that, there was still a lot of discussion about what's the real value of a comprehensive plan. And I think what is interesting is we see that you guys have bought into that and are investing more into it, realizing that this is going to be something that's helpful. And so what we wanted to do in today's conversation was show you not just how do you do a comprehensive plan, but with that extra investment that you're making, how do you get the most out of it? We believe that a great comprehensive plan has a handful of elements. We think it has to cast a vision for your future. It has to reach a consensus about that vision, though. If it's just one of you saying, you know, as council member or commissioner, this is what we want the vision to be, that doesn't create buy-in. That doesn't create a community rally around it. This process is intended to help you build that consensus. But that's part of it, okay? That's part of it. The other part of this, of a great comprehensive plan, is about creating real measurable goals so that you can tell where you're at in that process. And it requires you having an action plan so you know how do you get started on it. So let's just pause there for a minute. The engagement is critical. We've got to create awareness of this plan. And when we have awareness, whether it's with the crane or whatever we do, when we create awareness, then we can get people's input. And that gives us information, data we can use to say, how do we act on this? So critical ways that we will look at this plan is, one of the first things we have to do is not allow this to become a wish list. Too many comprehensive plans just list, these are the things that are in another community. Well, you go to Porter County, they have this. You go down to Logansport, they have this. We like those things. A wish list isn't a plan. What you have to do is decide of all the things that you're hearing, and you hear hundreds of good ideas. We have to set some priorities and say, do we want to do this? And are we behind it? Do we have the resources? Do we have the capacity to pull this off? Do we have the finances? Do we have the political will? And all those things have to come together. Adam and I had a meeting yesterday, and the members of the council was looking at the goals in our draft and saying, wait a second, we're saying we want to do a community center. Do we really want to do a community center? We've talked about it, it's expensive. We don't have consensus on what the community wants out of a community center. Are we just going to list this in the plan just because we've been talking about it, or are we going to commit to it? And I think that's kind of the approach that we like to take on this is, let's not have hundreds of great ideas. To us, a great comprehensive plan comes out with a handful of things that you're really going to focus in on and say, these are the priorities for this season in Pulaski County. These are the things.
Question.
Please.
Okay, so you just said that your council said that they've talked about a community center, blah, blah, blah. Have they done the comp plan yet?
Yes, they're in the middle of it, and they're deciding what in the world they want to say about it in there. Are they going to say?
Is the community saying that they also want a community center?
Split opinion.
Okay.
Split opinion, which is ultimately what you'll find in this. So how do you handle that when you get split opinions? You know, this is where we kind of look at it and say, okay, if you don't have consensus, then maybe it is a feasibility study that you need to start with. Do we want to pursue this? Let's find out some more information. Sometimes it's deciding that's a great idea, but we can't afford that. It's not something we can do practically right now. There's no grants for that kind of activity. I would rather see you come out of this thing with 3, 5, maybe 10 priorities out of this, and the hard things you're going to really work on, than have dozens and dozens of things listed that you have no intention of actually doing or no ability to actually do.
So we also just engaged Baker Tilly to do a fiscal study, so.
Good.
Okay, so I'm hoping that with your comp plan and that, we kind of have a better idea of how to move forward. So just know that that's also happening simultaneously as this is happening.
We love the fiscal study with this because it changes what you're doing. So it doesn't matter if you're big or small, this is a major issue. So we're doing a comprehensive plan in Zionsville, Indiana right now. Zionsville's got money, they've got resources, they've got the ability to do everything they want to do. Problem is the state just changed tax structure with SE1, and this is a community that is 3% of a city is any type of a commercial or employment. It's all residential. It's all open space. So they have to change what they're doing. And the fiscal study that we did for them helped them make decisions on how to reallocate land so that they could hit their fiscal goals, because they couldn't keep doing business the way they were doing without an impact. Tying these things together is absolutely critical. But it's also, this process is all about a good plan that leads to action. It's going to show you how to find resources. How do you find the grants and the dollars to go with it? I may make a bold claim, but there's nobody better at this in the state that has a better track record of finding funding than we do. And we're finding it, and it's not new. We've been doing that for a long time. I've been working with these Indiana funding agencies for 30 years. You can look at our track record with Stellar Communities, where we've done 5 Stellar Communities winners. We did 3 of the first 4 that were ever done. One of the ways you can tell if somebody is, making up a statement or something that really is true is look at when the multiple agencies get together, who do they trust to lead their programs, and whose planning work do they fall back on? And you can look at that with something like Stellar Pathways, where it's Okra and it's INDOT and it's housing all coming together. Hundreds of millions of dollars that have come into those communities as a result of those programs, including Dearborn County last year that we led with the Stellar Pathways program. Almost $300 million in ready dollars for the regions that we've represented. We're leading 4 different regions across the state, did planning for 5 and are actually implementing that for 5 regions right now. So we are just, whether it's these programs or others, we're all over it. There's not much that has surprised us as much as how much Lilly has changed with the endowment and how busy community foundations are right now. Between College and Community Collaboration Initiative, Gift 8 and Gift 9 right on its tails. We've just helped. How much money did we just get for summer camps? We got $10 or $15 million for summer camps across the state, going to youth.
So is that how you gauge whether your comprehensive plan is successful, about how much you can tie in at the end with grant money in dollars? Is that one of the things you use to rate a successful comp plan?
I rate a successful comp plan as much about buy-in and commitment and focus as I do those others, but I want to look at all these things, and when you come back to your plan in 5 years, you need to be able to tell whether or not you've had success with it. So one of the reasons that Dearborn County was successful with Stellar Pathways is they could look back at a strategic plan that was started 5 years ago. We did it for them 5 years ago. It's 60 items that they needed to do in that strategic plan, related to 8 goals. When they got 5 years later, they had already finished 20 of the items on the list and made substantial progress on 30 more. When the state of Indiana, these funding agencies see that, they see a community that's making progress, that's committed to it, and if those goals are actually measurable, they can actually tell that they finished it instead of having fluffy statements that says we want to be an attractive community or we want to be, you can say a lot of things that are really just kind of waving your arms. We want to see it be real practical, and the funding is critical. If all this does is give you ideas and you have no idea where to start, and you don't know which agency might fund it, then you're not well positioned. And we believe our resources really help that. The last thing I'll say is that when this plan is done, you're not going to be able to keep all of us around forever, but we keep a business development team that's very active. Ben's here before and after. And what we do internally is once a month, we go through all those new funding sources that are out there. Ben hears that during our regular calls. He's able to link back to the ideas that came in this plan and say, hey, there's new dollars coming from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. We ought to talk about that related to that park project that you want. That's ongoing service. That doesn't cost you anything. Ben doesn't bill to this job. That's just part of our overhead, is making sure we continue to serve. I'd just say this, we really do appreciate this opportunity. We think that there's a lot that goes into this, and we'd be happy to talk through all the different kind of comprehensive plans that we've done and what that's looked like for counties across the state. But when we finished up the conversation last time and saw that you guys doubled down on this to say, no, we really need to make a commitment, we did the same thing. I brought my A team in here because I really believe that you guys are set up for something and want success. And I think that this team is the ones that are best able to deliver that, given what you guys are doing.
Right, can I pick up sort of on the answer you gave to Sheila's question or comment about Baker Tilly being involved? So one of the things that we included in the RFP was addressing guidance framework for how we make the most in community impact investment with the revenues we're expecting to come from these solar projects as they come online. How does HWC approach that framework development? Obviously what Baker Tilly's study shows us is going to be an important consideration in how the county allocates not just those money, but our budget overall, but specifically with respect to focusing, like prioritizing the 3, 4, 5, 10 plan or projects that come out of the plan. What does your framework look like, or what is your approach to that to make sure that as the county starts getting this money, we are investing it in the ways that create the greatest opportunity for long-term sustainability in the county?
We look at that as a strategic investment plan. So different kind of terminology for that component of this, but it's a strategic investment plan. It says, what are those projects we want to do? What are the resources that they need, and how we match all those fiscal side up? What we want to do is any dollar that you're investing that's your own, we want to multiply it as much as we can by leveraging other sources that are out there. So if you're trying to do a park project, we want you to say, okay, which are the options, either through again, land and water or other programs, how do we multiply that? If you're trying to get infrastructure investment to serve employer sites or new housing, how do we leverage other funding sources that are out there and then look at it as a multiplication of that? We've got to think about a strategic investment plan. So you're spreading those dollars out across your priorities, you're making intentional investments and deciding what each one of those looks like. So we've done this in a lot of different places. We're even doing it in terms of quality of life plan. You might just talk about what we've done there, where we identify 6 or 8 specific projects and match monies from them.
Yeah, so we worked with the Community Foundation of Hancock County and worked on a quality of place plan with them, where we identified, a series of projects that, they wanted to enhance their quality of place. So with that, we ended up, this was kind of fun because they wanted us to help teach implementation. So they had a program that they had through the Community Foundation where they had a class come through, and then we helped teach implementation. We picked a mock project that was in that quality place plan and kind of walked them through how you actually do implementation. And they've come back to us again now, and they want us to do a retreat with some of their community, they have 2 different committees that they want to bring together to help implement the plan and drive it forward. And they've invited us to come in and do a retreat to select kind of their first project that they want to move forward, because they've got a lot of great projects, and they want to make sure that they're in alignment on where to start with it. So that would be kind of our next step with them. And we've got funding sources identified. They've got, their Lilly funds that they want to deploy, and so that's how they're doing that in their community.
What we've seen across the state as we work with ready communities, and we look at some of the bigger communities and then the rural communities next to them. The big communities, when they take this on, they think about a strategic investment plan. They start building, when they do a project, they start building match dollars right from the beginning. And so when ready comes along, they go to their shelf of 20 projects that they're trying to get done, and they look at their list and say, well, the Community Foundation's already committed this. We've got this much money from this private donation. This business is ready to sponsor this much. This redevelopment has committed this much. And now, hey, state agencies, here's the funding gap that we have. Rural communities don't generally have the resources and the capacity to do that. A great strategic investment plan as part of this will narrow your focus on projects and then start to help you be in the same position as some of those bigger communities by identifying what resources you can apply to these different projects you want to get done. It gets specific. It says, here's the specific projects we're trying to do, instead of it just being, again, a shotgun effort. Specificity, getting to that level of detail, it's going to be ruling some things out, and which is going to, at some point, folks are going to be disappointed because their priority's not there. And maybe they're that person of influence, but it's not really the priority that we heard. All those things have to be considered as part of this.
I'll just say too, I think it goes back to Sheila's question about how we measure plan success. That the plan has a lot of different audiences, right? So there's a storytelling component that is central to it that helps in your applications. Also making sure that we're telling the community story. There's also the plan commission audience, right? It needs to be a helpful tool in guiding decision-making for elected and appointed leaders, where the plan itself isn't going to make those decisions. But again, as a tool and something that provides that framework and can be used as a guide over time as funding opportunities change, as local match opportunities change, and projects may increase or decrease in priority.
And so there's some of you that are sitting here that were not here the last time they were here, but I remember Ben's example. Ben also sits on the county council in Warren County, and they did a comp plan, and when they did the comp plan, they came back and their constituents or their citizens said, we wanted better.
Ours is for the internet.
They wanted more better internet. So then this was a
95%.
guide to be able to say, I can't remember what it was, sorry. But this is a guide that says, hey, we need better internet in our community, and this is the path of why we need it, how to get there, and if there's grants or whatever. But I always liked that example, so I just.
It helped us go to the Indiana broadband office and show them, hey, our comp plan says we need it, so please give us the money. So we leveraged this recently. Similarly, we had a project that came in that gave us economic dollars. We hired HWC, I wasn't looking at the time, and they gave us a strategic plan. They gave us different buckets that we should probably look to spend the money in, so we could tell them certain things. And then when it came to the broadband, we took $1 million of our economic development money, and I think we've multiplied it by 15 now. So we took $1 million and we've gotten 15 million on top of it.
That's a great return.
But that came from me able to say no to certain things. Everyone's got, the fire department had needs, pool projects. Everyone had different needs, and we had to have something to be able to say yes to this and not right now to that.
But this doesn't align with our vision right now. I mean, I think it's
I'm going back to community foundations too. I mean, they're grant giving entities, and if you have money that is going out, like you need to be able to be focused and be able to actually have an impact on whatever area needs the most work in your community. So I think, again,
Rachel sits on the board of her community foundation.
Thank you for your service.
Rachel,
Yes.
if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. My superpower would be, I'd want to make, this sounds so conceited, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'd want to make more Rachels. I love getting stuff done in communities, and I would, just any of our local people who can implement, like, maybe that's the superpower, is being able to duplicate implementers. Because I think that's the way you get things done in communities is, you know, a comp plan is great, having it, and an actionable comp plan is excellent to have, but you do need to have community members that can move it forward. So we do love creating a great tool that is implementable, but the real strength is going to be the people that you bring to the table during this planning process that have buy-in, that get excited about it and want to continue the comp plan after it's been adopted.
Okay, actually, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
That answer leads me to a question for the team that I want to make sure to ask. In the RFP, we mentioned that we would like help making sure that, budget permitting, we have the right number of people, of staff in the right departments with the right job descriptions, the right responsibilities, so that we're not creating positions just to create positions, but we are creating positions that, if we can fund them, to make sure that we do the best job implementing this book, taking those 2, 3, 5, 10 projects and figuring out, whether it's something Carla and the Planning Commission are going to take the lead on, or I'm going to with one of my boards, or if it's something we're farming out to and partnering with the community foundation or a Main Street group or the health department, just depending on, but how do you approach, what's your process for giving us that guidance on building our dream structure?
We see this increasingly in a lot of community work. How do we build our capacity, right? I think we start from a point of what are the key services that we're trying to provide, what are the key resources that we have, and to your point, it's not just about adding staff to add staff. Well, in Indiana, we know, stole the virtues of big government, right? Are there people with the skill sets that align to the services we need to provide? And as we grow, how make that change? We worked with Mooresville, is the one that comes to my mind, where they were struggling from a capacity standpoint. They were of the size and complexity where they really needed a town manager that had been resistant to that, and what it meant was every town department had to group text town council to try and get an answer, and it made town council meetings unbearable. So through that process, we started to say, okay, what are the key functions here that some of the key services that town manager may provide in the short term? Here's how those can be translated to some existing positions. Or sometimes we're talking about communication. Maybe you need to utilize a consultant for some key tasks in the short term as you work to grow that into a more permanent position. I think you can say something for it.
Oh, I think there's so many examples. I just feel like when you're going through a conversation and you hear the same thing over and over again, we should have more success in economic development. Why are we not having success in economic development? And you have to go back and ask, well, is it because you don't have the right tools? Do you not have enough? Have you not put enough hours into it? You have the wrong policies? What is the issue? And so when we hear those problems, what we're able to do as outsiders is better quickly get to those issues. We did this in Owen County. Owen County, we're not having success with economic development, blah, 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 blah. And we looked at it and said, well, wait a second. You've got one person that is your economic development director and your tourism director and your chamber of commerce director, and they're spending 16 billable hours a week. You can't do that. What they did was we went through that process, and the Spencer, the town, and the county got together and said, okay, we've got to start to staff this right. They doubled the amount of hours that they were putting to this person. And 5 years later, they had separate staff positions for about 3 people, which was a part-time and one. And what happened in that downtown afterwards? That downtown exploded. They attracted a bunch of jobs from Hoosier Energy. They built a housing subdivision, two of them. They got cooking, pharmaceutical in town. They built a nice facility in town because they had the ability to respond to what the local businesses needed. And so you got to figure out what those are. Sometimes we look at it very differently, and it's, hey, we've got these aspirations. We want to do this, this, and this, and this, and we know we need to do all these things in the next 5 years because they're needed. It's infrastructure, it's road issues, it's bridge issues. And we say you can't get that much done in the 5 or 10 years that you're setting out for it with your staff. You have to hire someone, or you need to pare back your expectation. And that was what some of these communities have had to do. They had to make those kind of hard decisions. Do we scale back our expectations, or do we staff up for it? Critical part of this, and increasingly part of it, I mean, we can sit there with the mayor and he's complaining about how much time he's dealing with personnel issues. Like, wait a second, you've got 200 employees and you don't have an HR department, because they have trash department, they have utility departments and all this stuff. At a certain point, you've got to have these kind of things, or else that's out there. We can give you different examples from across other counties of your relative size that can help you understand what others are doing to manage the same problems you're seeing.
And how you scale it up. You know, we can't just wave the magic funding wand and poof, we have a full-time position with benefits. Like, we have to scale up to get to those positions. So how do we take those incremental steps to get there?
And sometimes, I'll say this, what we're seeing with the Senate Rolled Act 1 and the changes that have happened in finances is sometimes it's almost impossible for you guys to be able to fund those extra things that you want to do. I think about planning departments, and we're seeing more and more planning departments that are saying, I would really need another person, but it's not all the time. And so we're doing a lot more on-call helping communities because they can't pay for somebody full time. It costs a lot less to hire me during your peak times in the spring where you get a bunch of permits come in. There's just a lot of ways to attack this, and it doesn't always mean hiring someone.
So historically speaking, Pulaski County is really good at doing all these things and then putting it on a shelf and not doing anything with it. So as part of your comp planning process, will you help us make sure and give us the tools to make sure that it isn't just on the shelf?
I think a key piece of this is
Implementers.
Well, the implementers, but looking at your steering committee. So when we get this going, we will work with you to set up a steering committee. And I think identifying the implementers that we can pull onto that steering committee so that they have buy-in in the process helps after this gets adopted. That would be one of my secret tips and tricks, is like, that steering committee is so important on who you pick to put on that team.
And then Adam, as our project manager, what do you think your biggest asset and strength is, and what's your biggest weakness when you come to the table to do Pulaski County?
Sure.
Sorry, that's really on the spot.
No, it's okay. I think my strength in these planning processes like this is being able to facilitate a process that results in buy-in. And I think it goes back to the question you asked, is how do we make sure this doesn't sit on a shelf? Is if we sit in this, we can sit in this room and make a good plan for Pulaski County, right? But if no one outside of this room feels or takes a sense of ownership in it, then it is a lot easier to make it simpler.
You get those people to buy in.
Yeah, I mean, it is facilitating sometimes uncomfortable conversations. And I'm doing that right now in Boone County. And certainly did that as part of the Zionsville comprehensive plan process that we're going over this meeting on council to hopefully get adopted here soon. So I think I've been doing this in Indiana for about 17 years, and I am not one that likes to talk about myself at all, but I do feel like I'm pretty good at helping a community navigate what can a mess messy process, and that results in something at the end that people are proud of and are proud they took part in. And again, going back to your success question, what success looks like is when a member of the community brings the plan in and says, hey guys, you're not following the plan. Or the plan says we were going to do this. Is anyone moving on that? My weakness? We're in shoestrings. I got two shoestrings that are too warm. I think it's about finding the balance and how fast we can move through a process. Moving fast enough that people don't get burnt out, but slow enough to, like I said, to generate that ownership. And I would say sometimes I err on the side of caution, where sometimes we need to just push through. But again, I think what I would say is through our process, we know if we have an issue that becomes the topic of every steering committee meeting, from moving on, we're going to put that to the side. We're going to say we're going to have a special meeting. We're going to write people involved. Let's talk about that. We have to stop talking about it.
I'll paraphrase Brad. He wants so desperately to get people to work together on something that he will slow down the process to make sure that happens. We want to keep the thing on schedule too, so we're always balancing. What Adam does better than anybody I've worked with is that he can go into a steering committee meeting or into a public meeting, and there are people that are absolutely against something that one of you crazy people came up with an idea of, or whatever you came up with and pushed. Somebody's completely against it, and there's somebody completely for it on different issues, and they all feel very comfortable talking to Adam about they feel heard, they feel respected in that process. And that's hard to do because all of us have preconceptions about certain issues. The ability to get people that will listen and work together, that's why we brought him into this, because we think he's better at that than anybody.
And Adam is so good too in that he knows the details. Coming into a new county that we haven't worked, he hasn't worked in before, he's going to learn all the details about your county. I mean, I just am amazed by the numbers he can pull out. It's impressive, and he will know everyone's name in the room, and he learns it instantly. And I think that builds that trust with people who don't have a lot of trust in the process, because he does know it and he feels very calm and steady and solid.
So he cares.
Absolutely.
And I'll just say, I think the other thing, or my kind of approach to engagement in the whole process is, I understand most people don't care about the plan itself, right? It is the impacts of the plan. So how are we having a discussion about what the plan means in terms of the impacts of the community, not the 100 pages that
Why are you interested in Pulaski County? I mean, we're not much bigger than Warren County. Why us?
I'll say this. I grew up in rural Vigo County. So house between the big places of Shirkyville and Libertyville, both are, one was an old railroad town, one was an old mining town. So I'm just a country guy at heart. And I feel like Indiana's rural places need attention, they need help, they need resources. And, in the planning world, most people we see are urban planners, and they care about cities. But what we've cultivated is a group of folks that care about rural Indiana. They want to see communities have success. And I personally believe that all of that is possible. I believe that it's not there's no community that can't have success. I've seen it too many times. Places when I go back to Owen County, and they're just like, we're just going to knock down our whole downtown, this whole park, and start over, because they didn't believe in themselves. And what we've been able to help communities do is see things that believe in themselves and accomplish more than they realize. And do that in a series of years. It's not tomorrow. There's no easy answers to anything that we're talking about. But we found that over the years, we've been able to create long-term partnerships in communities to help. And, that's just part of it. We believe that we can be a partner. We don't come in here on a white horse to solve everything, tell you what to do. We really believe in all of this is on your terms. It's on what you want. What's the best version of Plastow County that you would define? And that looks very different than something in Porter County. It looks very different than something in Gideon County. It looks very different than Stark County. What is success to you and how do you define it? What is good development? What's bad development? What's acceptable and what's not? And we can help you find those things and find that success on your terms. We get a lot of satisfaction from being able to do that. And you can see the rural places where we've had success over the years. And we believe that we, hearing your commitment to this thing and saying, we're not just going to do the minimum plan, we want to do something and do this right. That tells us you're interested in doing this the right way. And that's why we showed up in full force today and brought in my full team so you can see it.
I think that's been one of the most interesting pieces for me, is just to see where you guys were at, last year on the type of comp plan you were looking for, and then having the new RFP come out with, the language that you've included and the things that you're looking for, to have that much growth as a community in that short amount of time, that makes me really excited to see how much further you guys can take this when we get a good comp plan together. And even your questions just about how do we implement this, like you have all the right ideas and the right direction of where you want to go, and it would be really exciting for us to work alongside you to really do something cool.
It's not the plan, it's not the RFP. It's what we see as a commitment from you to wanting to have success for you. When we see that in the community, that's what makes us say, that's where we want to be working, because we believe we can be a partner.
I like county comprehensive plans because they're big and complicated. It's a big geography. There's a lot of diverse interests. There's small town planning elements. There's recreation, natural resources, agriculture, and again, how all this fits together. It's a puzzle. It's not a game, but there is a puzzle component. How do we put that together? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I think that's important. And I just had a question about communication. A year is a long time to start a plan and, come to like the end of our time together. How do you communicate where you're at or things we should be doing or whatever in between?
So if selected, I'm your project manager. I know Ben said call him. I would say call me. If you have a problem with me, then call Ben. So again, like Rachel said, forming the project steering committee, it's critically important to get the right people on that. That group meets periodically through the process. What I find most helpful on my projects is like a bi-weekly check-in with me and if it's Nathan, primary point of contact. And we're making sure that we are always talking about resource needs. Hey, I'm waiting on this question. We're going to get you flyers for this, or here's the social media post. I would like that up at this point, so we have that regular touching point, because it is a long process.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, there's steering committee meets periodically throughout. On the engagement side, it's throughout with the website. We certainly want to make sure that the conversation is ongoing. There's some peak periods there early, and then what we call the big ideas of the house, that kind of critical inflection point. After we've heard a lot, develop some draft visions and strategies, and need to make sure we're on the right track with the community. So that's not a long answer to your question, sorry.
We do at our kickoff, our organizational meeting, we'll do a communications plan. And that's going to outline how you want to be communicated with, because every one of our clients is different. Some want, a call every couple of weeks just to check in. Some just tell me what I need. I got too much on my plate. Just tell me what I need to be doing and when, or just in time kind of communication. Mm-hmm. We'll do whatever makes the most sense for you, and that's completely customized to you. The outreach plan will be customized to you. All these things that we're talking about. The nice thing about this kind of plan is we'll cater all of this to what you guys want to do within as much as we can a reasonable budget for this. but a lot of flexibility from our side to meet you where you guys need to be and what the specific issues are. I mean, just, sitting here, you've got the fair coming up this summer. We need to be right now talking about how this plan can build awareness through the county fair. I will tell you, every comp plan that we go to, we get to the end of it for a county, and we get asked, if anybody says anything about the plans, well, did you show up at the county fair? And
Around this county, the power show might be a better.
happy to do whatever that might be, these things coming up, and whether we're giving out some cranes or folders, or maybe it's a different kind of a card or something that is getting people's attention. We need to be doing that now to build awareness, because that's part of the communication, is making sure everyone knows what's going on.
Adam, as project manager, can you just, this is our plan, it's not HWC's plan, but I don't think any of us can fully keep our thumbprints off of the work product we contribute to. So as far as that's going to be a reality, like, how would you describe your overarching philosophy, worldview, perspective when it comes to either like planning process more specifically, or just like planning philosophy, like how you approach a plan as a planner, how you think it through, or if there is a school of planning you identify with?
Yeah, I think, again, I agree completely. This is not my plan. This is not HWC's plan. This is your plan. I would care deeply about it, but there is this weird contradiction where I take no ownership of it. Like, if it needs to work for you, it doesn't need to work for me. So through this process, we're going to throw some things out there that don't work. You're not going to hurt my feelings, because again, it needs to work for you. So how I approach a process again is so much of it is based on meaningful engagement in using a process like this as an education opportunity, an opportunity to grow the next group of community leaders. I'm sure all of you struggle with capacity on your boards, missions. You're here because you're dedicated. How many you run into the same people at the same events all the time because there is a core dedicated group here? How can we use something like a comprehensive plan process to expand that? And then again, ultimately, that's what's going to lead to a successful implementation of whatever the outcome is. I'm not coming in with a preconceived notion of exactly what that.
What if communities told you they appreciate most about working with you?
I think they like it when our plans show results more than anything. When the money, when they find the grant, we get excitement. But we also find that our communities appreciate our people. Whether it's Adam, whether it's Rachel, whether it's Jennifer, we've consistently got people that are easy to work with, they're comfortable working with. And that's what we consistently hear. And then you hear this because you talk to our clients after the plan is done, and they're more direct with Ben sometimes than they are with us. I mean, you hear this all the time.
Yeah, I think the two things I hear is, and you heard a little bit, each of us kind of have that, I won't say small town, but a rural experience. Like I sit on Kirksey, right? So there's just a part of us that just wants to see it do well in rural communities. But I think the other piece, so before I came with HWC and was in one of your guys' shoes, the being able to get real specified with the action plan was key for me. Because I literally took their action plan, dumped it in an Excel spreadsheet. And it says, here's the topic, here's the action, here's the due date, here's who's responsible. And I still use that today. Like I call a joint session with the commissioners and council once a year, about March, so we can kind of think about budget season coming up. And we say, okay, here's what we've accomplished. We bring in the community foundation and others to the joint meeting. And we said, okay, do we have any updates on these things? Park board, what kind of updates do we have? And while we're at it, what's the 5 items we want to pick for this coming year that we really want to focus on? So having something tangible that we can action off of, one of the things I hear.
Yeah, I've got a question. And maybe you might want to help or anybody. It's been a while since I went through and read comprehensive. And I'm trying to remember, you're talking about action plans in there. Were there action plan? I don't remember that from reading the comprehensive plan.
Sort of, but I don't know that it was really as explicitly structured that way.
I don't think it was. So this is news to me when you're talking about the action we included in the comprehensive. Because ours from 2000 and whatever.
12.
I don't have that in. So this is new to comprehensive plans. That you're going to do that specific and helping us drive objectives. I mean, these sound like specific objectives that we have not had before.
Yeah, we very much bring it, it's a hierarchy approach. So, right, we have a big, broad vision statement, and that gets enumerated in a number of goals that tend to be topic focused. Under each goal, we'll have some objectives or strategies. And then some of our plans vary a little bit, whether the action items are specific to kind of that broader goal, or if we have action items specific to, key objectives. So a lot of times we're looking at key short-term actions, what are some of the longer-term actions, and then getting that next step of who's responsible for this. To Corey's point, it can't be a wish list. If we're going to say community foundation is leading, we expect the community foundation to lead implementation of this, and the community foundation hasn't bought in. Right?
I'm bought in.
Yeah, no, sorry, bad example.
I think with
Highway department. There's others I can, pick a better one, sorry, but it is a very action-focused document. And I will also say, we're looking 20 years into the future here in terms of the planning horizon. Don't expect the plan to live unchanged for 20 years. So again, as you complete actions, those can come off or check, maintain a checklist. What's the next action? Do we need to add more? I think that goal's, right, but maybe we need to adjust our strategy a little bit here and that.
And I remember the goals. I remember reading the goals on each one of those, but it did not really, which I believe is why it's challenged.
I think that's
Goals
very.
are there, but there was no
Yeah.
action. So I'm happy to hear that. Not just.
I think really, and this isn't reflective of Carla or Doug or people, I think because we were so late to countywide planning in this county, I think it's always been focused on being reactive. Like that's just kind of the default. We've never hired like a planner who came in to be, we started with the building inspector and then we added a little bit of staff, but it just like, that's always kind of been just how we did it. And so the plan was there. It helped set up the initial zoning maps and ordinance, but then we didn't have the capacity, which they've talked about, to like.
And some just want to meet state requirements. Like we were at a meeting a few days ago, but they said, well, if we just need to meet state code, can't we just take our old plan, change the date, and approve it? And we said, sure, you can do that.
I don't think that's a great idea.
It's not going to help you at all, right? Like, so some have just had it just because you've got to have one. Others say, how do we want one we can actually do something?
And I think along with the action items, I mean, we'll have the elements in a comp plan that we are legally required to have, which we need to have a future land use map to help guide, decision-making on how land uses change over time. So like those elements will be in there as well. But I think what does make ours more unique is that we do really focus on those action items too, to help get you to where you want to go.
The state requirements for comprehensive plan are very limited, so everybody can kind of do what they want with it. And that's why we say, hey, you have to set some expectations as to what this is going to cover, and you have a clear high bar. We want to make sure you understand what you should get for that, and that means that you should not just get loose statements, but you should get clear, measurable goals that you can look back at in a few years and figure out if you got them done. And that means that you should have an action plan that says how do you get started? Where do you begin? Who's going to do it? Those are critical things. If you don't have a name on it, it's really hard to get it done.
And I'll just add, not to belabor this too much, just in terms of the action, but how it relates more to land use and development. The comprehensive plan is a guide, and one of the key implementation mechanisms for comprehensive plan zoning is other control ordinances. So how through the comprehensive plan process do we identify maybe some of the things from a zoning development standard side that may need to be changed to better support
The build division.
It's critically important to look at that next step of how, I mean, it's all your implementation tools, and that's one of the critical ones you have to look at. We know there's a couple of challenges you guys are working through with that.
Absolutely.
That can run in parallel. So we do a lot of these with that thought process of how you update your ordinances is running in parallel, so we're constantly keeping track of those issues where there is a conflict or the potential conflict, and figure out how to better align them so that you come out of this, kind of get in the ground running and quickly get it updated and not have this barrier, which is an ordinance that doesn't support what everybody in the community is asking you to have accomplished.
I'm sorry. So a spin off on what you're saying. So you will incorporate obviously the ordinance language in with the comprehensive plan, or how will you determine, like, what do you go through to say, you look at the ordinance and say, this is horrible, or this is blends well with your comprehensive plan, and these actions in the comprehensive plan, how will you do it? Like, meaning you're telling us you're responsible for this and you're responsible for that, and here's our recommendations on how you do that.
I think the first thing I would say is that a comprehensive plan is a policy document. It is there to say, here's the basis for our decision making. Here's what we want to have happen. But if one of your goals is, we find so many little communities that say, wait a second, we want to make it easier for people to build good housing. And so what are the barriers that your ordinances have that make it harder for people to do housing development? And so we can look at that and start to identify specific things that need to be changed. Now, we're not going to write the language for those changes, but if we look at your ordinances and say, wait a second, every lot requires a 2,000 square foot house and requires brick on all sides and requires all these extra requirements, which we find in some places, then we can say, wait, here are some things we can do to better orient your ordinances to the marketplace. Sometimes it's something else. Maybe the barrier is that you've got that list of things that you keep approving at your Board of Zoning appeals. Maybe it's accessory dwelling unit, or maybe it's something else. Hey, do we need to revisit this because we've approved 10 of them in the last year? So maybe those things can be updated. We're just going to keep a good running list of things that we see as conflicts or opportunities. And we'll keep those as words, so you've got kind of a work plan going forward. This ordinance is a whole separate process from this,
Yes.
but there's so much overlap in the intent of what we're trying to do.
Okay. So, but you will incorporate the ordinance. Obviously, they have to coincide with one another, but
We'll take a look at them and give you some general recommendations. It's just not going to be the specific language of the ordinance.
Sure.
You'll have to go through a separate process to write that.
Right.
Because there's just a whole nother level of detail when you write a requirement versus something that is a general.
Right. It's interesting too, because like as we do focus group meetings or just meeting with the public, like we'll hear a lot of those common things that are wrong with the ordinance right now. Like they'll say, the permitting process is this or that, or they'll say, the size, the minimum, requirement for a house, like the size can be an issue in a lot of communities. So like those kind of get uncovered as we go through the process too.
Okay.
I won't name the community. They were interested in historic downtown, reinvestment, redevelopment. They had the same commercial zoning for their historic downtown as they did for their suburban corridor, and it very much geared towards the suburban corridor with large lots, big setbacks, parking in front, and they were trying to apply that in downtown Clayton. We talk so much about downtown in the conference plan, you have a code that doesn't allow what everyone can agree with.
So next Tuesday, primary election. Ben, I don't know if you're up or not. We're gonna have at least one commissioner seat that definitely is turning over because the incumbent isn't running. We could have 5 seats that change. How do you react to like a change in leadership potentially significant midstream?
We're not afraid to talk to folks, that are incumbent elected officials, those that are coming in, not incumbent, but the ones who are coming into office. We can include everybody through that process. The good news is that it's happening at the same time. We'll know what that looks like right from the beginning of this process. We just want to have an open and inclusive process where everybody gets a voice and everybody gets listened to. So whether an elected official or if they are a business owner, if they're a farmer or they work at Braun, let's give everybody a chance to participate and listen to every one of them.
All right, we've got time for one last question if somebody wants to get the last.
Sure,
He's already thrown out the oddball question.
Or if you guys want to have one last thing you want to say to wrap up if nobody has a final question, and then we're gonna eat lunch.
Thank you for your time today. We really appreciate the opportunity. Again, this is something we're very interested and excited about. Appreciate the dialogue today. You guys are really passionate about what you're trying to do here, and we'd love to be part of the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Microphones off, everybody.
Love this, by the way. Fantastic.
We were excited about it. Yeah. And then nervous at the same time. We were like, what if they hate the cranes?